Warm welcome to one and all. I am Sangeeta Singh. I work with PRADAN, and it's my privilege to host today's event. Let me begin today's program with a quick reflection. What does it really take for a rural woman to step out of her village, leave behind her loved ones, and walk towards a future she has never seen before? Our experience says that it takes courage, it takes support, and most importantly, it takes access to right opportunities. गांव से शहर तक का सफ़र सिर्फ दूरी का नहीं होता है, यह हौसलों और नए सपनों की एक उड़ान होती है. In the same spirit, today's report is not just about data and insights. It is about the journeys of young women from the remote villages of rural India. Before moving ahead, I would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to JustJobs Network, who has played a crucial role in shaping this report through rigorous research, field insights, and evidence-based analysis. Moving further, PRADAN extends its sincere gratitude for its partners for their continued support, thanking United Nations Women for support in Second Chance Education, Bajaj FinServ for supporting e-Empire program, Gates Foundation for piloting CLF-led Young Women's Employment Program, Azim Premji Foundation for supporting a wide range of development initiatives in PRADAN, and NOMI Network for designing program inputs. I would also like to thank all the participants who has come from diverse sectors like CSOs, employers, training partners, sector skill councils, SRLM, and NRLM at national level for joining us in person or virtually today. And with that, I warmly welcome to all distinguished guests, speakers, panelists, and participants to this very special report launch named What Does It Take? Rural Women, Migration, and the Road to Work. To formally begin the session, I would like to invite Shri Saroj Mahapatra, Executive Director from PRADAN, to deliver the welcome address.
Thanks, Sangeeta. Most welcome, everyone. And special thanks to Devasri ma'am and Anurag, Savina, and Anjani, Charanjit Singh ji, and all my friends and colleagues from the CSOs. Lots of known faces are here, Sunita, and so most welcome, all of you. जैसा कि संगीता बोल रहे थे, सो इट्स नॉट अबाउट द रिपोर्ट एक्चुअली. एक तो रिपोर्ट है बट खाली रिपोर्ट के बारे में नहीं है. इट्स अबाउट द चैलेंजेस, द एस्पिरेशंस एंड द द प्रोसेस ऑफ लर्निंग एक्चुअली व्हेन द रूरल वुमेन वेंट टू आउटसाइड and their aspirations are very different, and at the same time when they are not getting the proper support, why there is a dropout. So all those things are there in the report. So if you see the India's population, so that would be around 1.4 billion, which is and the rural youth अगर देखेंगे जो 25 साल से कम का है, नियर अबाउट 50% होगा जो ये पॉपुलेशन को बिलोंग करेंगे. So this provides a very good opportunity for economic growth, but at the same time काफ़ी इंटेंसिव स्किलिंग एंड ये सब में ज़रूरत है. स्किलिंग, एम्प्लॉयमेंट, एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप प्लस आई थिंक द गुड लाइवलीहुड अपॉर्चुनिटीज़. सो ये अगर थोड़ा सा हिसाब करेंगे द नेक्स्ट 3 decades मोस्ट प्रोबेबली 12 मिलियन जॉब हमको एक साल में क्रिएट करना पड़ेगा, तभी जाके ये 1.4 बिलियन पॉपुलेशन को हम लोग कैटर कर पाएंगे. Again, 68% of the youth जो देख रहे थे, so those are residing in the rural areas. So in the rural areas where we are working, and we have seen like there are many challenges, and there are many flagship programs like DDU GKY is there, and several skill development missions are there by the respective state government. Then Pradhan Mantri Kausal Vikas Yojana is there. Recently, this PM Biswakarma Yojana was launched, which is a very good opportunity for the youth. Similarly, under this NRLM program, like the SPP program is there, CMART was recently launched in the recent budget, and C Help, again, it's provide a very good opportunity for the rural women. Similarly, Sankalp is there with the Ministry of Skill and Employment. So I think there are many programs which provides good opportunity for the rural youth, especially women. But at the same time, there are lots of challenges. So ये थोड़ा सा हमको शायद and lots of space for improvement. So mixed responses are there. Like DTU GKY में अगर देखेंगे, जैसा मैं देख रहा था कुछ स्टेट लाइक छत्तीसगढ़ एंड झारखंड में, तो वहाँ पर प्लेसमेंट तो होता है, बट आफ्टर द प्लेसमेंट देयर इज ए ह्यूज ड्रॉप आउट्स. तो ये भी एक देख रहे थे. देयर आर मेनी एजेंसीज, बट और बहुत सारा जो स्किलिंग है दोज आर मेनली इन द अर्बन एरियाज. जैसा रूरल स्किलिंग के ऊपर में वेरी लेस फोकस इज देयर, बट हाउ एवर नर्सिंग, स्कूल टीचर्स, सिक्योरिटी गार्ड, ये सब के ऊपर में बहुत ट्रेनिंग होता है. So recently I was interacting with a young lady in Lohardaga district. वो बेंगलोर में अभी काम करते हैं. So while listening to her story, मैं स्टोरी को डिटेल में नहीं बोलता हूँ, but I will share 3-4 major learning जो हमको समझ में आया. I will be very brief. तो हमको ये समझ में आता है by working in the rural community, livelihoods is not about the only lakpati didi or income enhancement. It's about the building the capability of that individual, building the capability of the community institutions and the skill set, and building the entire ecosystem. So this is number one. Second is, जब हम लोग रूरल यूथ का बात कर रहे थे और वुमेन का स्पेसिफिकली बात कर रहे हैं, the aspiration development is very critical. जो आपके साथ हम लोग अभी जस्ट बात कर रहे थे, तो ये लग रहा था कि एस्पिरेशन लोगों का मन में है, बट ये जो इंटरनल एक लोगों से कंट्रोल लोगों के पास कैसे होगा, एंड उनका ड्रीम को कैसे करके रियलिटी में हम कर पाएंगे. सपोज दे आर एमिंग एट 2.5 लाख रुपीज़ पर इनकम पर एनम, 20,000 रुपीज़ का पर मंथ का बात करते हैं मिनिमम इनकम. तो ये जो एक कॉन्फिडेंस देना, येस आई कैन डू दिस थिंग. सो आई थिंक दिस टाइप ऑफ काउंसलिंग सपोर्ट और द मैपिंग द एस्पिरेशन, दैट इज़ वेरी क्रिटिकल ड्यूरिंग द प्री प्लेसमेंट इवेंट. देन सेकेंड पार्ट इज, जब हम लोग जब नौकरी में ज्वाइन करते हैं या कोई सर्विस पे आते हैं, तो हमारे पास में एक फैमिली सपोर्ट बहुत रहता है. सो ये जब रूरल यूथ का बात कर रहे हैं या स्पेसिफिकली गर्ल चाइल्ड का बात कर रहे हैं, तो उसमें लगता है कि उनका फैमिली को कॉन्फिडेंस में लेके काम करना और एक ट्रांसपेरेंट तरीक़ा से करना, ट्रस्ट बिल्ड करना, ये बहुत ज़रूरी है. अदरवाइज इट वुड बी वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू सस्टेन दिस इंटरवेंशन. थर्ड लग रहा था कि लाइक मेनली इन द ट्राइबल एरियाज, सो देयर इज ए कल्चरल शिफ्ट. हम गांव में रहते हैं, एक खेती में ज़्यादा हमारे पेरेंट्स मान लीजिए कि इन्वॉल्व हैं, फॉरेस्ट का लाइवलीहुड्स पे इन्वॉल्व है. जब हम शहर में जाते हैं, देयर इज ए कल्चरल शिफ्ट एक्चुअली. तो हम शहर में अलग तरीके का रहने का स्टाइल है या खाने का तरीका अलग है. तो ये जो एक कल्चरल शिफ्ट होता है ना, ये कैसे करके लोग का एक अवेयरनेस बढ़ेगा, ये हमको लगता है कि बहुत ज़रूरी है इस तरीके का इनिशिएटिव को सस्टेन करने के लिए. और एक काफ़ी इम्पोर्टेंट जो एस्पेक्ट है, विच इज़ सपोर्टिंग द इकोसिस्टम. इसमें यह लग रहा था कि जैसा हम लोग देखते हैं कि प्लेसमेंट होने के बाद हाउ वी कैन प्रोवाइड द मेंटरिंग सपोर्ट, मे बी ए टाइप ऑफ हेल्प डेस्क और से हम ग्राम पंचायत लेवल में बहुत सारा किए हैं, ग्राम पंचायत हेल्प डेस्क, बट मान लीजिए कि डेस्टिनेशन में जब लोग हैं वहाँ पर किस तरीके का सपोर्ट प्रोवाइड हो पाएगा, एंड सो दैट दे कैन शेयर देयर कंसर्न्स, देयर चैलेंजेस, एंड देयर विल बी ए पीयर सपोर्ट एंड पीयर लर्निंग ग्रुप. सो ये अगर 1 साल 2 साल तक होता है आफ्टर द प्लेसमेंट, तो जो लोग जाते हैं शहर में वो बहुत अच्छा से ग्रूमिंग होता है और एंजॉय करते हैं काम को भी, और उनका ग्रोथ भी होता है. तो आई थिंक दीज आर वेरी पोटेंशियल एरियाज टू इंटरव्यू. और आज का जो खास करके JJN से जो ये बुक बना है तो आई थिंक इट वुड गिव ए वेरी गुड लर्निंग अपॉर्चुनिटी फॉर ऑल ऑफ अस, जिसमें एक व्हाट आर द चैलेंजेस एंड व्हाट कुड बी द पॉसिबल वे फॉरवर्ड्स, ये लेके हम लोग बात करेंगे. और आज का जो डेलीवरेशन है आई थिंक काफ़ी अच्छे से, ये शायद जिस तरीके का स्पीकर्स है और आप लोग भी हैं, तो एक काफ़ी लर्निंग अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलेगा. थैंक यू सो मच.
Thank you, Sarojda, for setting the perfect tone for today's discussion. We now move to our next speaker, Shri Charanjit Singh Sir, to deliver the inaugural address. Sir is the Additional Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India. Okay. He is well known for his great contribution in providing leadership and shaping the day NRLM. Sir, kindly, stage is yours.
Thank you very much, and a very warm good morning to all. तो सबसे पहले तो मैं आप लोगों को बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं देना चाहूँगा कि tomorrow is 1st May, that is the International Labour Day. So there can't be more apt day to launch a report and to celebrate that how we can ensure that everybody has a job and work, and especially the women. And as she said, that the day NRLM focuses on women only. So it's a very complex subject, and there are so many complexities in it. If I go into details, it will take a long time. So I will just focus on certain points which I feel are critical and which may have been covered in the report or not, but I would like to share with you that what is the first of all scenario in the country. That is the female labor force participation rate. As per the 2025 report of the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, it's 40%. But as per the ILO report of the same year, it's 32.4%. So it's quite low. And if you compare with the countries, no, I'm not saying some great countries, some developing countries like Vietnam, it's 68.6%, and Nigeria, it's 80.7%. So these things put into the perspective that how we are moving ahead in the providing work and jobs for the women. And then so these are the national figures, and if you drill down, so then they reveal so many things which will be quite interesting and to mull over. And in Bihar, it's 24.7%. In Jharkhand, it's 43.7%. And in Odisha, it's 47.3%. So a lot of migration is taking place from Jharkhand and Odisha. So I will come back to this point, that why this is so and what we need to do about it. So as I said, this is a very complex subject, so we need to start from the education itself, because if you get proper education, proper skills, etc., only then you get the good jobs or works, etc. So I will come to the Bihar only. Girls, the dropout, not Bihar, I'm covering it across states. So across states, it's 8.7% at the primary level, 25.9% at secondary level and 25.1% at higher secondary level. So the women are dropping out of the education system. So if you are not properly educated, then your market also is less, that where you can get the jobs, etc. So what is the solution? So I saw one good example in Bihar only. So they have done a wonderful work. Jivika, I think, is one of the best SRLMs in the country. I have no hesitation in saying. They started this library cum coaching center at the cluster level federation. So I think this is the solution if we involve the community in educating the youth of our country. So they are providing a space at the block or cluster level where they have providing all the facilities, like the net facilities are there, the book facilities are there, and then they have made one community resource person, that is a Vidya Didi, who looks after this whole library cum coaching center. So the children are not only provided the space to read, they are guided also that how you can go for different job opportunities. And I came to know recently that 2 or 3 girls from these coaching centers have come to Miranda House in Delhi. So this is the achievement. So if you target the problem at the root level only, then the solution lies. So I think this is the need we work at the basic levels only then we can address the problem. So this is one of my points which I want to focus on. And then I come to second point. Like I mentioned about that a lot of migration is taking place. So if the migration, so it's a big challenge. When, like Saroj also mentioned that जब आप एक बिल्कुल कल्चरल डिफरेंट कल्चर से दूसरे कल्चर में जाते हो, इट्स वेरी टफ एंड स्पेशली इन द बिगनिंग. मैं दूसरों की क्या बात कहूँ, मैं आपको खुद का एक्सपीरियंस बताता हूँ मेरे लिए क्या कल्चरल शॉक रहा. सो आई हैव बीन नेवर गॉन बिफोर माई सिलेक्शन इनटू द IFS. दिल्ली तक ही थी मेरी बाउंड्री, दिल्ली से नीचे तो मेरे को पता ही नहीं था क्या है. और वन डे मतलब 14 दिसंबर 92 आई लैंड इन होशंगाबाद. तो पहली बार मैं होशंगाबाद पहुंचा तो दैट वाज ए कल्चरल शॉक फॉर मी. मैं कहा यार मैं कहाँ आ गया, ये जो मतलब मैंने तो मतलब अच्छे अच्छे ख्वाब देखे थे कि और मैं बड़ा जो स्पिरिचुअल प्रवृत्ति का हूँ, तो मैंने देखा यार यहाँ कोई गुरुद्वारा वगैरह होगा तो जाऊँ. तो एक छोटा सा टूटा सा एक था कमरे का, तो मेरे को और भारी डिसअपॉइंटमेंट हुई. तो मैं रोज़ शाम को पंजाब मेल वहाँ से जाते हुए देखता था, यार कहाँ मैं इस पंजाब मेल में चढ़ के वापस अपने चला जाऊँ, वहीं कुछ पंजाब में नौकरी करूँगा तो अपना बढ़िया रहेगा. तो ये हमको जब आप इतने हाई लेवल पे सिलेक्शन होता है, जब आपको शौक लग रहा है तो दूसरों को मतलब सोचिए जो जिस लेवल पे जा रहे हैं, ना उनका कल्चर, ना खाना पीना, ना फेस्टिवल, ये सब चीज़ें ये बड़ी मैटर करती हैं, स्पेशली इन द बिगनिंग ऑफ द कैरियर. तो मेरे को क्या है कि कुछ बड़े अच्छे लोग मिले. तो सबसे पहले उन्होंने मेरे को बताया, जो आपके साथ मैं शेयर करूंगा, स्पेशली गांव वालों के साथ. कहते हैं यहाँ से नर्मदा जी गुजरती हैं. नर्मदा तो माँ है, आप इसके दर्शन किया करो सुबह जाके. और इसको तो कहते हैं कि बाकी नदियों में तो नहाना पड़ता है, इसको तो कहते हैं कि देखने से ही आपकी कहते हैं कि आनंद इतना मिलता है, आपकी शुद्धि हो जाती है. तो तब मेरे को पता चला यार. और मैं सुबह डेली वहाँ जो है, बल्कि मैडम को बताना चाहूँगा कि नर्मदा जी के घाट के ऊपर घूमने जाता था. तो मुझे इतना अच्छा लगा, तो मन को जो शांति मिली, तब मैं धीरे धीरे फिर लोगों के साथ, फिर मेरे को पता चला कि ट्राइबल कम्युनिटी दे यार तो इतने अच्छे लोग हैं. तो मैं तो उनका उसके बाद फ़ैन ही बन गया. और भगवान ने मुझे इतना मौका दिया, मैंने सारी नौकरी नर्मदा जी के आसपास ही करी जितनी भी है. तो ये भी मतलब ऊपर वाला भी कई बार आपके साथ कहते हैं कि पूरा साथ देता है कि कैसे आपको काम करना चाहिए. अच्छा, अब मैं आता हूँ कि ये जो झारखंड और कहते हैं कि उड़ीसा से लोग जा रहे हैं, ये कहाँ जा रहे हैं लोग? दे आर गोइंग टू त्रिपुर. तो why can't we have such facilities in Bihar, Jharkhand and Odisha only? कि why do the people need to go to such far away places? Why can't we have such facilities in those places only? और बल्कि मैं वही कहना चाहूँगा, बल्कि मधु के साथ मेरे को जाने का मौका मिला. बैक क्लस्टर का एक मेरे को देखने का मिला, बेला बैक क्लस्टर. सो इट्स ए वंडरफुल थिंग. मतलब आप क्या है कि सारी फैसिलिटी जीविका और इंडस्ट्री डिपार्टमेंट्स ने वहाँ कहते हैं कि डेवलप करा दी हैं. You have just to go there and start your enterprise. So why can't we develop such different type of clusters? And not only that, I came to know yesterday only when I was preparing some points for this workshop. एक कुछ पर्ल ग्लोबल इंडस्ट्रीज ने भी मुजफ्फरनगर में एक कहते कि शुरू किया है. वहाँ भी कहते कि सारा मतलब सेम टाइप की फैसिलिटीज़ हैं. आप जाइए, आप तो कहते कि प्लग इन कीजिए एंड यू कैन स्टार्ट. And not only the infrastructure facilities, Sara management, entrepreneurship, technical skills, everything is being taken care of. So I feel that skill and industry, they need to go together. मैं ये नहीं कर सकता कि skill एक तरफ करता रहूं और industry जो है दूसरी तरफ. So I feel that both these things need to work together. So only then we can see the development which we see. And so one more surprising thing came to my notice जब मैं ये सारे notes वगैरह बना रहा था. There is one very wonderful scheme, that is PM Mitra scheme. So that is regarding this is PM Mega Integrated Textile Region and Apparel. तो इसके लिए क्या है, ऐसे अपने कंट्री में 7 इन्होंने कहते कि बनाए हैं, which basically are mega parks from farm to fiber to factory to foreign. कि सारी facility, whole value chain is provided there. So the surprise for me was there that no one such factory is there in Bihar, Odisha and Jharkhand. So why can't there be one such mega park in these states only? I think that is going to address many of the issues. So these are the things I think which need to be looked into. There are many more points, but I will keep myself very short and I will give you these points to mull over. I wish you all the best. I think this is a very good discussion. I think there will some good points will come out to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable insights and sharing your lived experiences with us. It was really helpful for our learning purposes. Moving ahead, we are honored to have Ms. Debashri Mukherjee ma'am for her keynote address. Ma'am is a 1991 batch IAS officer and is currently serving as the Secretary of Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India. Previously, ma'am held key leadership roles including Secretary of Water Resources and has overseen facilities policies for the Skill India mission and vocational training. It is my privilege to invite ma'am on the dais for the keynote address.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this very, very interesting discussion and to the launch of this report. I'd like to thank PRADAN and JustJobs for focusing on this very, very important issue in terms of, how do rural women migrate? When they migrate, how do they migrate with dignity? What are the things that we need to enable? How do we empower them to be able to find, one, dignified employment, but also to be able to stay in those jobs and find a trajectory, a growth trajectory that works for them? I think that is the crux of this matter. I've been privileged before we formally launched this report, I've been privileged to be able to skim through it. So thank you for sharing the draft report with me. I think what this report does is it creates an evidence base. So we've spoken about the skilling programs that are available. We've spoken about DDU-GKY, we've spoken about Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. There are the ITIs that look at women, skilling, and there is a strong push to try and get women into the more, what we call the hard trades, but they're really not hard trades any longer. the non-traditional trades, let me say. So, and most of us know about these things. But the point is, and something that this report brings strongly into focus, is that it is not just enough to skill. Normally what we do is we run the skill programs, we certify, we say, okay, candidate is ready. We also look at placement. What we don't look at, and which is an important issue, is what is it that you need to be able to sustain that placement. The mentorships, the networks. If you're moving outside the outside home, then what do you, then the, safe housing, a safe workplace. These are the things that we don't monitor over time. So therefore, this report actually creates a strong base for thinking about further policy action. What is it that you will need to do? And intuitively, I think migration, particularly migration for young women, if it can be done right, can be empowering. You are moving out of traditional family structures. And you possibly have, and this is something that I would be very interested in, learning more about, and maybe this is something that, we can track some of these women over time to see, are we seeing increase in agency? Is there an improvement in the agency of the women who have migrated outside their comfort zones, outside their family, vis-a-vis those who have stayed back at home? I think the report talks about the fact that they're still very subject to being called back. If there's a harvesting season, if there's, if you have to get married, you get called back. Is this the norm? Or are we seeing a little bit of greater financial independence? Are we seeing, some more financial autonomy? Are we seeing a better growth trajectory? How do we then look at migration as something in the growth story of these women? Is it more important to be able to put, is migration good for them? See, migration is needed in terms of labor movement. There is an automatic market pull. But when we prepare women for migration, what happens to them thereafter? That's a story that I'd still, be interested in hearing. So that's something that maybe could be thought about. I also think this is important in terms of, there's this big push towards international placements also. And there again, we are looking at, and before international placements, we're trying to make what we call P-DOT mandatory, which is pre-departure orientation training, which gives you some acquaintance with the country that you're moving to. Now, this is something then we need to also look at internal migration. What are the support systems available for internal migration? And that's something I think this report brings out very strongly, that, unless it is civil society organizations, really we have very limited support systems to look at internal migration. So this is something that I'm taking back from this report and this discussion. The other area of work which is interesting is about how do you promote entrepreneurship? How do you more strongly look at, so women who are not migrating outside, who are staying back in their communities, can we do a stronger push towards entrepreneurship? This time for the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, the next phase, the next financial cycle, we are putting together a large entrepreneurship program, which is totally targeted towards women. And here we are looking at 3 categories of women. We're looking at women in colleges, and we're looking at women in ITIs, because a very large number of them are in trades that are amenable to self-employment and creating enterprises. The third category that we want to look at is the rural women. Through the self-help groups and the, how do you sort of encourage entrepreneurship, and what are the tools that we can we can work with rural women in terms of their enterprises. So that is a focus area, and I would welcome inputs on how to design it better, how to implement it better as well. With that, I think this is an area of, for me, it is a very important area, because women's empowerment, getting women into paid employment, getting women into jobs that further their agency is something that is so critical for India's development, for equity, as well as, creating a society that we would all like to live in. So therefore, thank you for this, and I hope that there will be insights from this workshop that we can further work with. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an insightful keynote address. You have clearly highlighted skilling of young women is not enough. Monitoring them throughout their journey is also crucial. I now would request ma'am to kindly join us on the dais and for the report release. And I would also request our other dignitaries, Shri Charanjit Singh sir, Ms. Madhu Khetan, Ms. Sabina Devas, Ms. Ranjani and Ms. Isha to formal release of the report, and Mr. Saroj Mahapatra. I would also request Mr. Anjani Singh and Mr. Anurag Beher to join us on the dais. I would request our dignitaries to launch the report. I would request all the dignitaries to stay on the stage for the felicitation purpose. I will request Bandana and Shikha to do the felicitation. Our sincere gratitude to esteemed guests for joining us to release the report. Findings and insights from the report. Over to you, Isha and Ranjani.
Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Isha Gupta, and I'm the research lead at JustJobs Network. Today, my colleague Ranjani Rajagopalan and I are going to present some key findings from this report. And this report has been jointly developed by JustJobs Network and PRADAN. And we are genuinely grateful for this partnership. So for those of you who may not know about JustJobs Network, let me take a moment to introduce us. JustJobs Network is an applied research organization which works on one of the defining challenges of our time: how to create better, more inclusive work in a rapidly changing economy. We produce evidence-based, grounded research that is action-oriented to inform policy, shape institutional design, and drive real change on the ground. And we do not do this from a 10,000 feet level, but we work very close to the field. We partner with civil society organization, implementation partners such as PRADAN and others across governments and civil societies. And we ensure that our research reflects ground realities and translates research into meaningful field-level impact. So our vision is to create a world of work where everyone has agency, security, and dignity. With that, let me start with the context that you need to know. You need to understand why the question that is at the heart of this research is really important and urgent. So I would like to start with a question, and I would like you all to sit with it for a moment. So what does it actually take for a young woman, say 19-year-old from a tribal village in Odisha, to wake up one morning, look at her life, and decide, no, I want to earn my own income, I want to work, I want something different. And then what does it take for that decision to actually materialize? For her family to say, yes, go ahead, take up that job. For her travel, sometimes even across states, to a place that she has never been before, to where maybe she doesn't even know the language, and to do a job that she has never done before. And then, if she gets to that job, often against considerable odds, then what does it take for her to stay in that job or maintain a sustainable employment? So that is the question that is at the heart of this report. So how do rural young women in India come to see formal employment understood as paid work with written contract, with paid leaves and access to social security benefits as possible, acceptable, and worth pursuing? And what shapes their ability to sustain it? So let me bring your attention to some scale of this problem that we are looking at. So young women, we all might know this, are among the most excluded from India's labor market. Nearly 43% of young Indian women are not in education, employment, or any form of training. That means they are not productively employed, engaged. And if we compare it with, so this is about 2 in 5 women. If we compare it with men, it is 5 times higher. For men, the NEET rate, which is not in education, employment, and training, is 8%. Now you might think, well, rural women may be doing better than urban women, right? It is, if you look at the numbers of labor force participation, it is actually true. Young rural women have a higher participation rate than their urban counterparts, and there's a 6 percentage point difference. And yes, over the last 3 years, the labor force participation rate for young rural women has gone up from 22.8% to 29.3%. But here's what the numbers hide. That rise in the participation is largely driven by unpaid family work. So these women are mostly engaged in agriculture work. If you look at, so they are employed, they do not have any salary or wage or income. And if you look at the periodic labor force survey, in fact, it says that 91% of those rural women who are working are in self-employment or casual daily wage work. So no contract, no paid leave, no provident fund, no health insurance whatsoever. And that said, 9% of them are in regular salaried employment, which is also partly informal. And this, as compared to urban young women, is very less. For urban young women, the number is about 60%. So when we talk about women labor force participation in India, we have to be honest, the participation does not necessarily mean that they are into good quality jobs. So now, when we think about how do we solve this problem, right? So the first thing or the standard response that comes to our mind is skills training. And yes, skills are necessary, technical skills are really important, but they are not alone sufficient. India has invested tremendously over the last decade in various skilling programs such as PMKVY, which is Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushal Yojana, right? But if we look at, and in DDU GKY, in fact, 33% of the seats are reserved for women. And in practice, more than 50% participants or the candidates in this program are women. But according to, if we look at the outcomes, they tell a very different story. In a report that surveyed over 2,600 DDU GKY candidates, found that only 25% of women remain employed for more than 3 months. That means 75%, 3 out of 4 women dropped out even before completing 3 months into the employment. So why is this the case? Because the barriers that keep women, that rural women out of the labor force are not mainly only about skills. They are about social norms that restrict mobility. They're about families that won't grant permission, about women who have never seen anyone like them in formal work and genuinely cannot imagine it for themselves, and about workplaces that once women arrive, do not support them to stay. So the retention, as I said, is a major problem. So we look in this report, we look at the PRADAN's E-Empower program to understand what are the factors that actually shape the meaningful and sustained workforce participation for young women. So what actually moves the needle for young rural women to come into the labor force? So here are some key findings. We found that journey of a young woman towards employment starts much earlier than training or employment itself. It starts with aspiration. Think back to that 19-year-old girl from Odisha. Before she can even migrate, or before she can take up a job, or before her family even says yes, she first has to believe herself that it is possible for her to work. So this is where the journey begins. It begins with aspiration. So for most of these young women, the idea of formal employment is not something they have grown up with. It is not in their imagination. They have rarely, if ever, seen a woman working in their village in a formal job, so who has a contract or a regular salary or a pay slip. So before any skills are actually built or opportunities are created or accessed, there's already a fundamental gap, which is the absence of viable or visible possibilities. And aspiration, we found also on the ground, is not innate. It is something that has to be built. There are these different elements that are also listed on the slide that help develop aspiration to even think about work or to imagine work as a possibility for these young women. The very first is self-discovery and reflection among girls. So the girls need to be made aware of who they are, what are their strengths, what have they overcome. Many of these women have never been asked those questions in a formal setting before. And writing about their own life histories, mapping their struggles, successes, strengths, weakness, and aspirations, and often for the first time, helps them reflect on their own journey, their sense of identity and possibility. The next is awareness of financial independence, importance of financial independence. So understanding what it means to earn your own money, to have a salary slip with your name on it, to save money and send back home. For many participants, we've seen on the ground that it was generally the first time they connected work to personal agency, not just household survival. The next is gender equality discussions. Social norms that have shaped their choices, including mobility restrictions, care responsibilities, early marriage pressure. So basically allowing them to understand those and think about how to negotiate those. Then is exposure to new possibilities and livelihood exploration and decision making. So telling them what kind of work exists, what job roles are there, which sector, how much are they paid, what the workplace looks like, so as to allow them to imagine them working in the workplace ahead. And finally, perhaps the most important of all is role models and success stories. Hearing from women who came from the same place, faced the same constraints, and made it work. This is what makes aspiration feel real rather than theoretical. But none of this happens in isolation. What makes these elements actually work is the environment in which they are happening. So being in a company of other women also helps. It helps build solidarity. Peer learning and sharing of experience is also important. Listening to each other's story, what worked, what was hard, what surprised them, builds trust and self-confidence. So as I mentioned, the importance of role model, I would like to demonstrate this power of role models by sharing a story of Jamuna Pasupareddy from a village in Rayagada, Odisha. So Jamuna was the first woman from her village to leave the formal sector work, to leave for the formal sector work. In a place where migration was something only men did, not women, where families worried about safety, reputation, and distance, and where the norms were simple that the brothers will get further education and the sisters stay home. She herself came from a 6-member household. Financial constraints were a problem. And then still, despite all of this, Jamuna went anyway in another job for a formal job. Over 2 years, she sent nearly 3 lakhs rupees back home. Her family built a house and met essential household needs. But the bigger change was not just economic, it was social. So her village started to pay attention. Girls approached her asking about the program, the workplace, the hostel, the safety. And we met many of these mothers and women candidates in the field. And they all said the same thing. Seeing Jamuna made them think that if she can do it, even I can do it. We also met Jamuna's own mother. She told us, earlier she was hesitant, but today she's so proud of her. And other family members and mothers also come to her and ask about Jamuna and how did she do it. So this is just one story of many that we saw during our fieldwork. And this demonstrates how role models are really important and crucial for aspiration development. With that, I would like to hand over the mic to my colleague Ranjini to take forward the presentation and share the rest of the findings.
Thank you, Isha. My name is Ranjini Rajagopalan, and I'm also a research lead at JustJobs Network, and I'll be taking this forward. So we stopped here. We understood how aspiration gets built, how women begin to see formal work not just as an idea, but as something that is possible and worth pursuing, right? So now we realize that once a girl has made a decision to move forward, there's something else that needs to be taken care of. This is about their readiness to migrate, right? This is not an individual choice. What we've realized through our fieldwork is that this is a collective household one, which makes navigating family consent extremely important. Now, this is not a problem to be solved, right? It's a reality that all of us have to work around. Because when it comes to navigating family consent, everyone has a stake in this issue, right? Every member of the family is concerned. Where will this girl be traveling to? Will she be safe? Will she have a place to stay? What will the community think? And if you come from, say, a tribal community, there's norms and social and gender norms that you have to navigate even around that. So these things are not just going to dissolve simply because a girl has built the desire to travel. So what actually helps? So what we've seen is that transparency goes a long way. When families know upfront, specifically, mind you, not vaguely, what the job actually involves, where does she stay, what is the pay, then the resistance drops. Even more powerful, Have an exposure visit. Take them to see the destination. Allow the unknown to become known, right? And you know, when you have these things happen through government channels, when you travel in a group, all of this adds to the legitimacy. So what is our takeaway here? Our takeaway is treat the family as a partner, not as an obstacle. Build trust, and that gets the woman into the workforce. Now, we've achieved consent. The girl migrates, she gets the job. It's a very exciting time for her. We all know what it's like to get our first job. Money in your hand, perhaps for the very first time. Colleagues, friends, a peer network. A whole world that she never knew existed out there. For all women, but especially rural women, this is immensely transformative. But here's also something that we don't really talk about, the trade-offs. This transition is hard, really, really hard. She's away from everything familiar. No shared language, no family or familiar faces. Food is different, suddenly confronted with long working hours. Homesickness and a cultural isolation in those first few months is extremely intense. And more importantly, often there's no obvious person to call to actually work through some of these issues. And what we've observed time and time again, that in circumstances like this, it is not the job that pushes the woman out. It is everything around the job, the loneliness, the displacement, and most importantly, no support system to help you work through this disorientation. So when women drop out, let's be very clear. It's not because the job was necessarily bad or because the woman failed. It's because there was no support at the crucial time that was important for them to stay in that job. Now, before we jump into what those support systems could look like, let me take you through something that we personally found extremely interesting. What is the anatomy of a good job? And let me start off by telling you, these young girls that we spoke to and interviewed, they're not naive. They're very, very pragmatic. They have aspiration. We've seen it gets built, right? But they're also very understanding of the practical constraints that surrounds their life, right? So what do these women care about? It's very obvious to us that when they think about a good job, they care about a lot more than money. When my colleague Isha told you that they enjoy working and talking to their peers, this is true. They enjoy being in a community of like-minded women. They care about a workplace that feels safe, one which empowers them, one which is respectful. They care about, leaves that allow them to go home for a wedding, or perhaps if someone is sick. They care about the possibility of growth. And on paper, all of this is there, right? But what we've observed in the field is that there's an actual gap between what is on paper and what is there in practice. And it is these information asymmetries that often undermine all the effort that goes into actually getting that woman to the workplace. So what are these asymmetries? We met women who did not know that they had employment insurance cards or how to use them if they had these cards. We spoke to women who had taken a few extra days off to go to their village and came back to find their entire work histories deleted because suddenly they had to join under a new ID. We found that many of them did not know about leaves. They did not know about pay slips. They did not know about why they were getting a hike or what the progression pathways look like. So there was a lot of opacity. And more importantly, a lot of them are enrolled in the roles of third-party organizations, which allow for employer responsibility to be diluted. So this is the gap that we are observing. But these issues aren't unresolvable, right? With the right kind of support systems, retention improves and sustainability starts. So I'd like to go into the recommendations. What works? The very crux of our report, right? So let's start with what those pathways look like. including what building those pathways look like. What does it take to change? So start early. Start in schools and start in colleges. Start in your educational institutions. Because why should career counseling start just when a girl reaches a placement center? Why can't you tell them about the lived realities of the labor market early? Integrate this into your education systems. Tell them what are the jobs available, what are the pay scales, what are the realities that they're going to be exposed to. Because that way, they make better decisions early on, and so do their families. We already know that aspiration can be built. And if you build it earlier, and if you build it more deliberately, then it is all the more better. Now we come to something that we're all familiar with, diversifying the sectoral offers. Right now, a lot of the default pathways take you to the same set of sectors, garment, hospitality, etc. Now, none of these are bad jobs. I want to be very clear about that. These are all great jobs. But there's more out there, right? We need to let women know that there are more options on offer. When you expose them to diverse success stories, when you extend technical exposure, and when you create placement options across sectors that allow them to access these non-gender normative jobs, they might even find that they have a better fit in those places. Now, we've built these pathways. What does it take to reinforce them? We all know that the first few months are crucial. We would argue that it's even more crucial to keep, your lines open throughout the first year. The first 6 to 12 months is a critical window. And what does that mean? What kind of support do we do here? We are looking at help desks. We're looking at help desks that workers can actually reach, people that are available on call, and do checks with them routinely. Not because there's a crisis, but because they care. It creates a sense of stability in these women that they have not been forgotten, that somebody cares about them, right? And also, more practically, it helps you catch problems early, which prevents these women from dropping off. Also, and we have many people in the audience who represent employers, it's extremely important to build strong partnerships with them, but equally important to hold them accountable. And what does this mean? This means due diligence prior to placement, compliance checks, clear contracts, and a grievance redressal mechanism at the least. Not as a box-ticking exercise, mind you, but as the foundation that builds trust. Because when women know that these are available, and when employers know that women know, then retention improves and everybody wins. And finally, we get to what does it take to sustain these pathways. This is the final stretch, right? Formalize peer support. Women who've been through the experience, there's nothing like that. They are the best resource for women who are starting out, right? Alumni networks, peer platforms, structured meets, whether you're doing this through ecosystem partners or through institutional mechanisms like migrant support centers, they provide information. But more importantly, they build belonging. And we all know that belonging is what keeps you there when the going gets hard. And finally, don't let wage employment be the only story. A lot of these women can and will and have been entrepreneurs. And for entrepreneurship to be a viable opportunity, it needs scaffolding. It needs role models who've done it. It needs financial literacy. It needs access to credit. It needs mentoring, an entire supportive ecosystem that you must invest in, not just infrastructure, right? And when we do that, then we open up the entire picture of what economic participation can look like for rural women. So I would like to sum up by saying that the question isn't whether rural women want to work. They do. We know they do. The question is whether the ecosystem is ready to meet them partway. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjini and Isha, for such insightful presentation. The report has beautifully brought out an important reality that the journey of rural women into formal employment is not just about skills or jobs, but about aspirations, mobility, family support, and building systems of trust and dignity. Thanks a lot once again. Moving ahead, to help us deepen the perspective, we have our next speaker, Shri Amarjit Sinha Sir, for the special address. Sir is a former Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, and has also served as advisor to the Prime Minister of India on social sector and rural development matters. He has played a key role in designing major national initiatives like Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, National Rural Health Mission, and Gram Swaraj Abhiyan. Sir, we kindly request you to join us on dais and share your thoughts with us.
Good morning, friends. Compliments to PRADAN and JustJobs Network for this particular publication. I got an opportunity to read it carefully over the last 2-3 days, thanks to an advance copy from Saroj. I recall the same room, Rosa Abraham and Amit Basole, a few weeks ago, were here presenting the State of Working 2026. They raised many issues. That report was based on secondary data, and like all secondary data, it did not have that pulse of the people in terms of how things actually pan out at the cutting edge. The report today, since it looks at human lives and identities in specific situations in Orissa, Karnataka, the sense that one gets is the people behind the challenges that we face. I have had the privilege of working with PRADAN for many years in the rural sector over the last 10-12 years now, and also in working in dabbling in some research to understand and unravel the challenges of school skills and work. Some of you are aware we are currently engaged in doing a public report on secondary education, where the research question is the 14 to 21-year-olds, what are their human capital aspirations and what it is that the system is offering them. It's a study based on household surveys, youth surveys, school visits, school records, assessments, and so on, as also institutions of skill. We have completed the urban study on Delhi, the national capital region, and we have now panned out to 8 other states to do a similar study. I am not repeating whatever that's been said, but it is adding to what has just been said. You have, for example, rightly pointed out that the increase in rural areas on labor force participation in recent years, 2017-18 onwards, has mostly happened in the informal employment sector, either as a MGNREGS worker or as a single woman doing some agricultural or animal husbandry operations, or somebody who has had the access to credit under the Rural Livelihoods Mission, and so on. Clearly bringing out the challenges of the informality. I happened to do a detailed study on the subject, and we could establish very clearly that the COVID years saw the increase in allocations for MGNREGS, but very much on the rates of wages that were earlier based on the consumer price index for agricultural labor. The rates being low, the wages being low, men in most states preferred to go and earn market wages outside, but the women worked on these. So yes, opportunities for working in MGNREGS for women even nationally about 57% were women, but if you went to Tamil Nadu or you went to Kerala, it would be more than 85% were women. The men were all away on higher wage work. So clearly it was not the best opportunity, but still they were making use of it. Likewise, in terms of access to retail credit, which is again something that is noticeable over the last 5-6 years in India, and we need to understand and unravel that. The lending to the rural women's collective, the self-help groups under the Rural Livelihood Mission, about 11 lakh crores over the last 10-11 years now. And what it shows is that a lot of what we account for as an improvement in female labor force participation in rural areas are these 1-person and 2-person units. Recorded as an enterprise, not sure whether they're making profits, not sure whether they're earning a break even as well, but still getting covered simply because they've had access to credit. The third development, which Pradhan will bear me out, the Rural Livelihood Mission that began in 2011, it was for the first time in our development initiatives, we thought about the women farmer, the Mahila Kisan Sashaktikaran Pariyojana. Now, the impact, the scale is large, about 30-40 million women are part of that. But what it did, the retail lending credit available to women as also a program specifically looking at women farmers, because they are the ones who are doing it, even though the land doesn't belong to them. And what comes out very clearly as a consequence, what was being done as unpaid family labor earlier, some of it starts getting accounted for because they have taken credit, they have started some animal husbanding more than what they were doing earlier, bought some assets through that, and so on. Clearly, the picture of formal employment was eluding them. In your report, you have rightly mentioned the linkages between education and skills and employment and the quality of employment. I think it's more important, especially when you are discussing Odisha, because Odisha was one state which made a lot of efforts at short-term skilling. But if you look at the compensation at the end of the short-term skilling, it was low. If you analyze it deeper, you get to understand how much secondary completion would have made a difference, or senior secondary completion would have made a difference to the kinds of jobs that were available. So clearly, the absence of adequate secondary completion does come in the way in terms of the opportunities that we create. The short-term skilling program on a large scale has been going on now for more than 10-12 years, but the jury is still out. The jury is out whether somebody would like to sustainably work on a 12,000 rupees job or a 13,000 a month job. And we are all aware, the periodic labor force survey 21-22. If you earn 25,000 rupees a month, you figure in the top 10% of the formal wage earners. Clearly bringing out that the jobs we've created are not very decent jobs. We may have been able to beat chronic poverty, but it is not good enough for a decent job or a quality of life which goes with a living wage. So clearly, the jobs we offered were 15,000, 16,000, 17,000, 12,000 rupees a month. Not enough for the decent living that we were looking for. So where is the way forward? Now clearly, based on the recommendations here, I agree with all that is written in the report, but I just wanted to add, building up from what Rosa Abraham had to say from here, as also Amit Basole from the same place, was the fact that the kinds of jobs which are on offer are not very high-paying jobs. How do you make a difference there? And even for securing the better among those opportunities, you definitely need to be better educated and employable. Educated not only in terms of completion of a certain years of schooling or exposure to short-term skilling, but in terms of employability seen by the employer as somebody who potentially can improve productivity of a firm or a company. The other thing which comes out very clearly, and this is where some of the experiments, some of them Pradhan is a part of, some others are outside Pradhan. But if I could just give one or two examples which illustrate the point. Many of you have heard about the Balini Milk Producer Company. set up in Bundelkhand by about 69,000 women, very poor women, who were all members of the self-help groups in that area. A lot of social capital was built, but opportunities were not available. The dairy cooperative route could not expand at the rate where the requirement was. So we chose to go for the National Dairy Development Board services. As an experiment, we took it up, 2 in Bihar, 2 in Madhya Pradesh, and 1 in Bundelkhand area of UP, setting up dairy milk producer companies. The shareholders are all these women in that area. And what it has clearly demonstrated, not 1 rupee of capital subsidy is involved in these processes. From the government side, what was assured was 3 to 5 years, all the technical professionals, managers required for running that producer company shall be paid for by government for 3 to 5 years. But all those managers and professionals had to earn their salary thereafter by ensuring that the size of the company rose. I'm happy to report that none of these 5 require a single rupee from government now. The Balini Milk Producer Company in Bundelkhand, if you look at the revenues, it's huge. Over these years, almost about 1,000 crores is the total revenue of that producer company of 69,000 women. It does make for a difference. But then dairy is a much easier sector than many other sectors. But if you look at recent trends, each time that Anjani Kochar does an evaluation of the Rural Livelihood Mission, or Ashwini Deshpande looks at Tamil Nadu and Jharkhand on the women's collectives, or PK Singh, Pramod Kumar Singh does it for the national NRLM evaluation, they all point out that incomes do rise. Mostly through higher returns from animal husbanding. They have been able to afford some additional goatery, poultry, dairy as a consequence. Not good enough for decent jobs. Clearly, that education link, and that's why hopefully by March 2027, we should be able to come up with a national public report on secondary education, which would have looked at about 1,000 schools and about 20,000, 30,000 households, would have looked at a large number of ITIs, polytechnics, and other institutions, even short-term skilling institutions, to understand the transitions of school, skills, and work better. Friends, it's important to understand the human face at the last end. All of us who have been working with the women's collectives over the last many years are fully aware about the challenges that we face at the cutting edge, the kinds of battles, the kinds of negotiations, the kinds of challenges which our sisters, Didis, have faced in working with the Rural Livelihood Mission. There's always that hesitation in the beginning. We may have made some initial beginnings. I come from Bihar, so I have seen Jivika very closely. The Jivika women have made all the difference. If you visit any village in Bihar, they will, if something is not working well, the first reaction of the community, give it to the Jivika Didis, they'll set it right. To have earned the confidence of the community as a collective of women, and this is not only one state, state after state. It's an opportunity. That's the last point I wish to make. It's an opportunity to take it to scale. Lot of the linkages of the work we do in livelihood with improving schools and learning outcomes in schools, making a senior secondary school in any panchayat, rural area or urban area, can we visualize it as the place, a community learning center, where every 14 to 21-year-old has an opportunity for a second chance in life. Because what is coming out very clearly in our analysis of the secondary data, as also the field work that we are doing now, the 14 to 21, more than 70% of them are reject of some kind. They have either failed a board, they have dropped out, or they have completed the board without grace, just about managing to clear. If that is the case, clearly not only counseling, but a vibrant second opportunity for 14 to 21 using the senior secondary school and all the children in the feeder area having the flexibility to make that school the center from where apprentices could be tied up, internships could be tied up, training programs can be tied up, counseling could be tied up. We need to provide that kind of a community linkage at the educational level. The skill education gap will have to narrow if we really wish to move in the directions that this report is indicating. The last mile is always the most difficult. And we've faced this on many occasions in the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushal Yojana. We thought we'll establish migration centers and we've done it all. Yes, it helped for some time, but the scale on which migration happens, it was a minuscule small number that we were able to work on. I'm aware that in Bangalore, especially in the apparel sector and other sectors, the retail sector where women from Odisha have been going, there are arrangements of collective living which at least give them the confidence of language, food and so on. But I'm afraid these are just very small little beginnings. The strength, if you ask me about rural women, why I am continue to be so hopeful, it is because of the kind of work PRADAN and others do with the women's collectives on scale. That number is large. It's not just 100 million women in rural India are a part of this network. It is also that 50 million of them have already borrowed or taken loans from banks. So credit access is also available to half of them. And if you have 10 crore women, and on an average, say one from a house, there are 20 crore households in rural India. And especially since these are women from the poorer communities, there is really an opportunity here if we can link with health, education, nutrition, skilling to make a difference. It cannot be in compartments, because if we don't have adequate employability at the age of 18 or 19, we will miss the bus of decent jobs subsequently. It's definitely one of the things that are required on a priority. That second chance should not elude us. Thank you.
Sir, I request you to stay back on the stage for the felicitation purpose. I request Isha to felicitate sir with the token of appreciation. Thank you, sir, for such enlightening remarks. Sir, you rightly highlighted the challenges of women's labor workforce participation and also highlighted how NRLM and other government schemes have facilitated women's participation in the workforce. You also highlighted the need for education and employability for securing dignified jobs. We now move to the next important segment of today's event, the panel discussion. Today's panel brings together practice, private sectors, grassroots institutions, and lived experience, giving us a 360-degree perspective on what it takes to make rural women's pathways to work stronger, safer, and more sustainable. It is my privilege to introduce and invite our esteemed panelists. Ms. Kanta Singh Ma'am, Deputy Country Representative at UN Women India Office. Mr. Anjani Singh, Senior Program Officer from Gates Foundation. Mr. Devesh Seth, Associate Director at ADICO. Ms. Madhu Khetan, Integrator at PRADAN. And Ms. Mini Nayak, who is our program participant and has come all the way from Lucknow to share her journey. I kindly request our panelists to take their seats. And to moderate this conversation, we have with us Ms. Sabina Devas, Founder and Executive Director of JustJobs Network. Sabina is also a Senior Visiting Fellow at the Center for Policy Research in India. From here onwards, I hand over the session to Ms. Sabina Devan to moderate the conversation.
Hello, can you hear me? It's working? Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sangeeta. And of course, on behalf of the Just Jobs Network, I would like to also thank PRADAN for their wonderful partnership. This has been an incredible opportunity for the Just Jobs Network. We take pride in being a research organization that is very different because we don't just do 10,000-foot level research. Our research is very grounded. We want to convey the realities of people's lived experiences on the ground in terms of their lives and livelihoods to policy at different levels. And we cannot do that unless we have partnerships with organizations like PRADAN. So we are truly grateful for this opportunity to work with you. With that, I'm also very excited to be able to have a conversation with everyone on this panel, esteemed experts, lived experiences, stories. Muni, आपका जो हिम्मत है और हमें बहुत हम excited हैं आपकी कहानी सुनने के लिए, तो अभी आएंगे आपके पास. So I'm very excited to be able to moderate this panel, and we've had a very rich morning. Many things have already emerged, so I will not repeat them. But I want to highlight just a couple of things. I think what is very clear is that if we look at the world of work today, women are still struggling enormously. We still battle patriarchal norms. We are still relegated to low value-add jobs. We still struggle with whether real or perceived struggles with safety. All of these concerns, the expectations upon us, all of these concerns are very real concerns for women today. And despite all of the efforts that have been going on, over decades now, women still have a very long road ahead and still have a very long way to go before we can claim our equal positions in not just the world of work, but also in our homes and social lives and personal lives. I think the important thing that I want to highlight there is that even though there is this long road ahead, there's also been progress. So on the one hand, I was recently in Ajmer, where I was talking to a lot of beedi workers, and these women get 170 rupees for rolling how many beedis? You tell me, how many beedis do you think? Exactly. Someone knew the answer. That's not fair. But yes, 1,000 beedis. They're sitting and rolling and rolling and rolling for 170 rupees. And that's in Ajmer. In Karnataka, it's 120 rupees, right? These are, there's so many stories there where women are not compensated for the true effort that is going in. And there's plenty of research that also shows that when women earn, whatever it might be, they actually put it in the welfare of their families and their children, right? So the social multiplier effects of women's work are enormous, and all of this is discounted. But there's also glimmers of hope. Those very same beauty workers, when I talk to them, वो कहते हैं कि दीदी हम ये काम कर रहे हैं, हमारी बेटियां नहीं करेंगी. It's very moving, very moving. So what are some of the takeaways from the conversations today? My God, I moderate all the time, but I'm getting emotional. I think these issues are much more than about jobs and skills. My whole career is about jobs and skills. But it's much more. It's about dignity. It's about pathways. It's about agency. It's about empowerment. It's about equity. And that's what we're all here for today. So without further ado, let me introduce, the panelists have already been introduced, but let me go one by one through all of our esteemed panelists who have a real wealth of experience in working on these issues for a very, very long time. So let me start with Kanta Singh. So we'll go in this order. Let me start with Kanta Singh, who's the Deputy Country Representative of UN Women. So Kanta, I've had the privilege of working with you for many years now, and I wanted to know if you could kick us off in telling us sort of what, in your view, are the key constraints that rural women face in accessing good jobs, right? Not just any jobs, but good jobs. And what efforts currently are in place that support them, and what do we need to do better? And I'm lumping all the questions together because we're short on time. But also, if you could, say a word about, in the context of what support do they need when they migrate. And we've been talking a lot about the migration journeys and pathways. What is happening? What more needs to happen in your experience? Over to you.
Thank you, Sabina, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Sabina, I think the report that was shared this morning, I think is one of the most comprehensive in terms of understanding the nuances of how women's work is being appreciated in the country right now. Some of the things that I never heard before in meetings, but I experienced while working in the sector, was that women have to go together, for example. If you send a single woman from a village, it'll be very difficult for her to survive. And we have tried everything. We've tried 1 girl, 2 girls, 5 girls, 10 girls, but the best success rates have been when number of girls go together. And they have stayed and they have done well. I think one thing that I would like to highlight in the beginning is that many of these constraints will be changed if we change the way we raise our daughters. We raise our girls for marriage, and we raise our sons for careers. I think if that changes, that each one of the individuals at home is a productive human being and they have the equal potential, if not more or less, I think many things will change. The narrative has to change. And the second thing that Amarjit sir was talking about was, how do you map the aspirations? Munni or Munni की sister जो यहाँ पे Natasha है शहर में, I really don't see a difference in their aspirations now anymore. It is just the way we expose our girls to opportunities. And I think that has to change. If you don't see an aeroplane, for example, you won't dream of sitting in that aeroplane. So exposure is absolutely critical. What is changing, however, is that because of internet, because of technology, all young women are also getting exposed to a number of opportunities that exist. Their dreams are exactly the same as of urban girls. So I think we need to change the way we plan for our girls. This is for rural girls, this is for urban girls. If an urban girl doesn't want to get into a job which is of 13,000 rupees, why should we put our rural girl there? Things are going to be as difficult. And third thing that also again Sinha sir mentioned is that there is a mismatch between what employers are offering and what girls are ready to work for. In terms of salary, in terms of workplace harassment, in terms of living expenses there or accommodation there. There are a number of constraints that you face every day when you are working. In a workplace like mine, we can't claim that everything is great and everything is hunky-dory there. Every workplace has a set of challenges, but I think women who come from rural areas face double challenges. The problem, Sabina, is that if some incident happens to a rural girl, the news spreads faster. 5 other girls drop out. If something happens to that girl in a city, 5 families or 10 families in the rural areas, they come to know about it and then they don't send their girls. So the impact is very different. So it is very important, and safety is not just a perceived threat, it's a genuine threat. Safety at workplaces, safety in the public spaces, online safety. We want our girls to be online, and yet we are not putting safeguards in place to keep them safe there. Also safety at home. Even urban women are not spared from that, but I think this is a genuine threat. And the last constraint that you want to, I wanted to highlight was the expectations from a woman, care work. Everything related to home is a woman's responsibility. Young girls, and Muni will share some stories with you because I was the Muni. And I can tell you that we have to work at home before we go to school. We have to come back and do work at home and then do our homework. So it is a reality. Only my daughter, I made sure that they didn't have to do household work because I was there and the helpers were there. But in a rural household or an ordinary household, housework is still a responsibility with the girl and her mother. So I think some of these things are changing now. I'm really happy that young women are aspiring, young women are ready to take the challenges. And the very last thing that I'll say is that I think we need to convey to each young woman that financial independence works like nothing else. Your family, your father, your husband may be billionaire, but unless you have your own money, you will never get the dignity and respect that your report is talking about. And for that, you have to start earning money. I think जितना हम इस बारे में कम बोलेंगे उतना ही कम है. इसको बहुत ज़्यादा बात करने की ज़रूरत है कि financial independence is absolutely critical for a woman's dignity. And marriage may or may not happen, may or may not work, but financial independence will always work. Thank you.
Thank you. So, जैसे कि आपने बोला महिलाओं को बहुत सारी चीज़ों का सामना करना पड़ता है. कुछ social norms होते हैं, family उनको बाहर जाने देती है कि नहीं जाने देती, समाज क्या बोलेगा अगर एक महिला काम करेगी, और इन सब चीज़ों के अलावा उनके अपने अंदर कितना बिलीफ है ना, उनके सेंस ऑफ आइडेंटिटी क्या है, उनकी अपनी पहचान क्या है. जैसे कि रंजनी ने बोला अ सेंस ऑफ पॉसिबिलिटी एंड एजेंसी. सो ये सब चीज़ें मायना रखते हैं जब हम सोचते हैं कि हम महिलाओं को आगे कैसे उनको अपॉर्चुनिटी कैसे दें, उनको कैसे आगे उनका रोज़गार और उनका अपना एम्पावरमेंट कैसे करें, कैसे उनको आगे बढ़ाएं. In today's world, there are aspirations. As Kanta said, there's exposure through social media. There's an awareness. There are aspirations. There's also, to some extent, more of an awareness. We still have a long road to go in terms of exposure. I agree with that completely. But there is more of an awareness. What we find often in our field work is, young women will say, "Mujhe doctor banna hai, mujhe engineer banna hai, mujhe police woman banna hai." बट वहाँ तक कैसे पहुँचे, उनको वहाँ तक उस मुकाम तक पहुँचने के लिए कैसी पढ़ाई करनी पड़ेगी, कैसे सपोर्ट स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं, वो उसकी जानकारी उनको बिल्कुल नहीं होती. राइट. सो देयर इज़ अ लॉट ऑफ challenges along the way. Aspirations are important. Building aspirations is important. But what's equally important is taking those aspirations and creating the pathways that actually lead these women to realize their full potentials. इसी बात को आगे लेके जाने के लिए मुनी जी आपके पास आएंगे. अब आप हमें अपने बारे में बताइए. आप हमें ये बताइए कि आप कहाँ से हैं, आप थोड़ा सा अपनी फैमिली के बारे में बताइए. ये बताइए हमें कि आप अभी क्या काम कर रहे हैं. आप हमें अपनी कहानी बताइए कि आप जो कर रहे हैं आप वहाँ तक कैसे पहुँची और आपको उस मुकाम तक पहुँचने के लिए क्या क्या मुश्किलें आईं और उनका कैसे आपने सामना किया.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Moni Naik. I belong to Dhenkanal, Odisha, and we are 4 members in my family, including me. I complete my graduate in Odia language. मैं 2024 में आईना प्रदान बजाज फाइनेंस की जो NGO है उसके बारे में एक फील्ड विजिट करने के लिए उनकी सारथी मैम आए थे, वहाँ से पता चला था मुझे. और 2025 में मेरी स्टडी कंप्लीट होने के बाद मैं उनकी NGO ट्रेनिंग सेंटर पे गई थी और 5 डे का ट्रेनिंग होता हुआ रीइमेजिन ऑफ फ्यूचर, REC लाइफ स्किल जिसे बताते हैं, और स्मार्ट गोल सेटिंग, जेंडर इक्वालिटी के बारे में टोटल 5 डे का ट्रेनिंग कंप्लीट करने के बाद मैंने WSC कॉलेज भुवनेश्वर में हॉस्पिटैलिटी सेक्टर से फूड एंड बेवरेज का 3 मंथ ऑफ सर्टिफिकेट कोर्स कंप्लीट करके अभी मैं उत्तर प्रदेश के लखनऊ मार्केट होटल गोमती नगर में एज ए ट्रेनी के रूप में स्टार्टिंग सैलरी मेरे 15,000 ज्वाइन की हूँ और मुझे अभी 4 मंथ कंप्लीट हो रहा है वहाँ। मेरी इच्छा थी कि मैं आगे पढ़ के लाइब्रेरियन बनूँ, बट मेरी पेरेंट्स जो है वो दोनों, मेरे पापा और मम्मी दोनों हैंडीकैप से है और मेरी कोई ब्रदर भी नहीं है। मेरी एक सिंगल छोटी बहन है, वो भी पढ़ाई करना चाहते हैं आज ब्यूटिशियन कोर्स में। तो मुझे मेरी जो ड्रीम थी उसमें अभी मतलब मैं डिस्टेंस स्टडी कर रही हूँ, थैंक्स टू आईना प्रधान बजाज फाइनेंस टीम कि मुझे इतना अपॉर्चुनिटी दे सके कि मैं आगे जा सकूँ मेरी ड्रीम को अचीव करने के लिए। मेरे लिए चैलेंज ये थी कि मेरी पेरेंट्स को ज़्यादा मतलब वो एजुकेटेड नहीं है, तो उन्हें पता नहीं था चीज़ों के बारे में कि कैसे आगे, जब वो छोड़ ही नहीं रहे थे मुझे मेरी गांव से बाहर जाने के लिए भी उनसे परमिशन लेना पड़ रहा था। और ऐसी वक्त आ गई थी कि मेरे घर में कि मुझे दूसरे वाले सलाह दे रहे थे कि शादी कर लो, कोई आ जाएगा तुम्हारे पास अर्न करने के लिए और तुम फाइनेंशियली सपोर्ट फील नहीं करोगे डाउन। तो मेरी पेरेंट्स ने बताया कि जहाँ तक मैंने लाना था ला दी, अब तुम्हारी मर्जी तुम कैसे करो। तो मैंने उस टाइम उनसे नेगोशिएट हो गई कि अब मुझे पैसा दो, मुझे पढ़ना है, अगर अब मुझे पैसा नहीं दोगे तो मैं खुद बाहर जाऊँगी, अब मुझे तब रोकेंगे तो मैं नहीं आ सकती। अब जो लोग मुझे पहले शादी के लिए सलाह दे रहे थे अब वो कॉल करके बता रहे बेटी कब घर आ रहे हो फेस्टिवल के लिए। तो ये बड़ी अच्छी लगती है जब लोग आपको बताते हैं ना अब आगे आगे क्या क्या सोच रहे हो। मतलब मेरी ऐसी सिचुएशन थी कि मैं जब स्टडी भी कर रही थी ग्रेजुएट, तो मेरे पेरेंट्स को यही बताया गया था कि बेटी को क्यों पढ़ा रहे हो, बेटी की शादी करा दो वो सेटल हो जाएगी। तब मेरी पेरेंट्स ने बताया था कि अगर उसकी मर्जी है तो पढ़ने के लिए हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते। अब मैं मेरी स्टडी भी कंप्लीट कर रही हूँ, जॉब भी कर रही हूँ और मेरी फैमिली को फाइनेंस सपोर्ट भी कर रही हूँ। तो ये एक अच्छी अपॉर्चुनिटी थी मेरे एनजीओ, इस एनजीओ से जुड़ने के बाद। मतलब क्या होता है ना कि गाँव में ज़्यादातर अपॉर्चुनिटी का चांसेस नहीं होती है और हमें ज़्यादातर इन्फॉर्मेशन भी नहीं मिलती है कि कौन सी मतलब ऐसे कि डिस्ट्रिक्ट में भी क्या क्या हो रहा है, कौन सी अपॉर्चुनिटी आ रही है, लाइक कौन सी कंपनी ओपनिंग हो रही है और कौन सी प्रोजेक्ट चल रही है। ऐसी नहीं होती है इन्फॉर्मेशन ज़्यादातर, क्योंकि उस तरह का माहौल ही नहीं रहता है। एंड सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट बात कि मैं 2025 में जाके मोबाइल के बारे में सारे पता कर मतलब चलाना सीखा। मुझे तब रियलाइज हुआ कि हम लोग कितने पीछे हैं। और जब मैंने माइग्रेट की जॉब के लिए भुवनेश्वर से आई लखनऊ, तब मेरे साथ 3 दोस्त थे मुझे मिला के, बट वो लोग का क्या था ना, वो कोई एनजीओ से जुड़े नहीं थे, उन्हें इतना ट्रेनिंग नहीं किया गया था। आफ्टर 1 वीक वो लोग जॉब छोड़ के चले गए हैं। और अब मैंने उन्हें भी बताया था कि तुम पेशेंस रखो, हो जाएगा तुम्हारा सारा काम। अगर इधर पेशेंस तुम अभी छोड़ रहे हो तो जाके दिक्कत होगी तुम्हें। अब वो लोग होटल से कांटेक्ट करें कि नहीं सर हम रीजॉइनिंग करेंगे। तो मैंने जो बताई थी उन्हें कि इस एक एनजीओ है, अगर तुम्हें कभी भी ज़रूरत हो, कोई भी मेंटली सपोर्ट हो या तुम्हारी किसी टाइप की सपोर्ट ज़रूरत हो तो कांटेक्ट कर सकते हो। उन्होंने मुझे बाद में नंबर भी मांगा था, तो मुझे खुशी हुई कि नहीं कोई तो मतलब ऐसे लगता है अभी कि बैक में कोई टीम है, आई एम सेफ। बिकॉज हर मंथली हमें हेल्प डेस्क से कॉल आता है कि आपको ये जॉब अच्छी लग रही है या ये जॉब में कोई दिक्कत हो रही है, तो हम प्राउडली बता सकते हैं कि हाँ मेरी जॉब अच्छी लग रही है, हम ये कर रहे हैं। अगर कोई भी बताता है कि ये जॉब हमसे नहीं हो रहा है तो वो उन्हें दूसरी अपॉर्चुनिटी का ऑफर देते हैं और डिमोटिवेटेड तो कभी होने नहीं देते हैं। लाइक जैसे कि वर्क प्लेस में जैसे बहुत सारे केसेस होते हैं, लाइक कोई हैरेसमेंट हो गया, कोई इंसिडेंट हो गया, तब भी वो लोग सपोर्ट करते हैं कि नहीं आपके साथ ये हो रहा है तो हमें बताओ, हम उसकी सॉल्यूशन निकालेंगे। अगर तुम्हें वहाँ सेफ्टी फील नहीं हो रहा तो हमें दूसरी जगह से शिफ्ट भी करवा देंगे। तो तब फील होता है नहीं मैं दूर हूँ लेकिन अकेली नहीं हूँ और बैक में कोई है, तो वो बहुत अच्छा लगता है। बिकॉज कि बहुत सारे एनजीओ से ट्रेनिंग देते हैं, जॉब दिला देते, दैट्स इट। बट आईना प्रधान बजाज फाइनेंस के जो एनजीओ चल रही है वो आपको जॉब भी देती है, ट्रेनिंग भी देती है और आपके साथ लॉन्ग टाइम कंटैक्ट में भी रहती है। थैंक्स।
मुनि, मेरे को 1-2 सवाल आपसे और पूछने हैं। तो आपको लगता है कि जो आपका एक्सपीरियंस है, आपको देख के जहाँ से आप आए हो वहाँ पे और भी लड़कियाँ देखती हैं तो कहती हैं हमें भी पढ़ना है, हमें भी ये करना है। आपको लगता है आपकी जो सहेलियाँ हैं ऐसा हो रहा है?
यस मैम, मेरी बहन ने भी अभी बताई थी कि दी मेरी स्टडी कंप्लीट हो गई +2 का, तो मैं ब्यूटिशियन कोर्स करूँगी। तो उसकी दोस्त भी बताया कि हाँ मैं भी ब्यूटिशियन कोर्स करूँगी। तो मैंने हमारी जो टीम है एनजीओ टीम से बात की थी। उन्होंने बताया कि अगर उनकी स्टडी कंप्लीट हो गई है बट सर्टिफिकेट नहीं आए हैं, तो बाहर नहीं, जो महाराष्ट्र में और वहाँ पे अभी चल रही ब्यूटिशियन कोर्स के लिए, तो अप्लाई कर सकते हैं। वो लोग बताया कि मेरी बहन तो बताया कि पापा मम्मी दोनों हैंडीकैप है, तुम बाहर हो तो मैं नहीं जा सकती। उसकी दोस्त बता रहे तुम नहीं जाओगे तो मैं भी नहीं जाऊँगे, हम सर्टिफिकेट आने के बाद यहाँ से करेंगे। और उनसे इंस्पायर होकर उनके जो दोस्त थे वो लोग भी अभी बातचीत कर रहे हैं मुझसे, नहीं हमें ये सीखना है। तो तब अच्छा लगता है कि जो लोग की फैमिली मुझे बताते थे कि तुम्हें आगे जाके क्या करना है, तो अब उनके बच्चे हमसे कहते हैं कि चलो दी हमें भी करना है।
चलो, बहुत बढ़िया, थैंक यू, थैंक यू। So next, I'd like to come to Mr. Devesh Seth, Associate Director at ADECO. Devesh, nice to meet you. Thank you for being here. I was wondering if you could tell us, for those that may not know, a little bit more about ADECO. What is it, how it works, and specifically, what does ADECO do to, work with women like Munni to sort of take their aspirations, enable opportunities, and then, retention. And what are some of the challenges that you see and the potential solutions that you might also have for, scaling up and creating more opportunities, but also outcomes for young women and young rural women in particular?
Thanks, Sabina. I think, thank JustJobs and PRADAN, of course, for inviting me for this, panel. Well, ADECO works at the, intersection of employers, institutions, and the, candidates. Okay, so the first and foremost thing is that we provide jobs across India. Globally, we are present at over 60 countries. And we are the leading global workforce provider when it comes to human capital. Now, there are various programs when it comes to apprenticeship, contractual workforce, training solutions. It's like what we, say is like one-stop shop for HR services. It's not confined to only one particular thing, but anything you ask, we are, providing there. Now, I think, from the last 2 hours, everything has been, covered. I was, just, thinking what else. So everything mostly covered. So I'm from Bihar, and I do understand what are the, challenges which I personally face as a, forget about, any gender, that 12वीं हो गया उसके बाद तो बाहर जाना, यहाँ पे कुछ भी नहीं है तुम्हारे लिए. So there were 2 cities, and I think so, Pune and Bangalore. Either you go to Pune or, Bangalore to, further, education, and talking about, past 12th only, okay? Now, when it comes to young women, young rural women, the foremost problem is there is no exposure, there is no information, and there is a lack of confidence as well. So you need to treat that it's like a child who is going first day at a school. Nothing at all he or she is, actually aware. This is what actually happens. Now, the impart session, when it comes to the confidence level, the family creates a very, very integral part. But I think one thing which is not being covered over here is like the expectations versus reality. 1 month it takes. I'm pretty much sure PRADAN and, likes of PRADAN doing a fabulous job to, making them understand this will be your salary, the social securities and everything. But what actually happens when it comes to, like, everybody was talking about the dropout ratios. When these rural young women go to places like Hosur, or maybe a place in Tamil Nadu, or a Red Hills for that matter, it's a culture. Forget about the cultural shock. It's like, sir, ye to cheez mere ko bola hi nahi gaya tha. So the end of the day, what actually happens after 1 month down the line, they ask that I need to go back to my hometown or the village for that matter. So the solution which I want to bring on the table, and any of the employers, that if we are asking any young rural woman to move from the native place to 1,000 or 1,500 kilometers, why can't we have an incubation center that, okay, this is what needs to be done? Because only the formal communication is there. There is no practical, theoretical knowledge which is being imparted. Maybe, for example, I'm taking an example of a warehouse, a simple warehouse, picking, packing, loading. So if we'll say that this needs to be done, the person will understand, okay, is it something which I actually want to do, or it's something just for the purpose of livelihood? And if the dropout will happen there itself, rather than traveling all the way to, places like 1,500 kilometers, and then the counseling session happens, why we are, postponing thing? I think it's like it should be part of pre-onboarding. The documentation, 1 week, and it all takes. I think we are not doing it as of now. What we are doing is reactive measures. Kya hua, koi problem hai, etc. Now the second thing which actually what we have seen in terms of dropout ratios is basic things, lack of transport, lack of the information which is being provided, or maybe basic facilities. I will say food is also one of the factor which is not being provided, a simple healthy food. We are talking about NASA and everything. I think we are not able to provide basic stuffs. The travel is not there, the accommodation is not there, the food is not there, and this is why dropout actually happens. So if 3-4 things will be fixed eventually, I think we won't be seeing any dropouts in near future. Because the migrant workforce, it takes time, 2 months, 1.5 months, bare minimum. And with the attrition coming into play, we have seen the attrition upwards of sometimes 70%. If there are 100 people joining, 70 leave the organization, and the simple answer is, "Sir, ye mere ko bataya nahi gaya tha, and I'm not getting the basic facility as a human at least." That's the main thing. So if you fix these two things, I think our job is done. I think, what actually happens, that this young woman doesn't, lack the aspiration and the, inspiration or the ambition for that matter. The system lacks the, inspiration. There's a problem in this system. Everybody is, running in a rat race. So I will not name any employer for that matter, okay, in this, forum, but I want 1,000 people as of yesterday, not today. I want 1,000 people as of yesterday. There is a huge demand in the market. So places forget about the conventional retail sector or hospitality, be it logistics, pharma. There is a huge demand, but we don't have enough workforce to fulfill the demand. That's the problem. So if I call any employer, I mean we have tons and tons of clients. They will say that they wish I want 1,000 people here, they wish I want 500 people here. Trust me, we're not able to provide 50 even. Because there is a problem and we need to fix it. So there is a gap. I think what I've said, that these two things, I think the gap will be covered up.
Great.
That's all.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Devesh.
much.
I think that this is a really important insight, and it's something that we at Just Jobs also talk about all the time, which is, when you look at, on the one hand, so many young people, certainly women, do not have good quality jobs, do not have jobs, right? They're in informal employment. They will all tell you, I can't find a good job. Where are the jobs, right? And on the other hand, you have exactly what Devesh was saying, that employers that are saying, well, I need people, but I can't find the people, right? And this is a huge paradox, and there's many reasons for this paradox that look at, skills mismatches, but we have to go beyond what is the obvious, which is, okay, how are we skilling? This person doesn't have the right skills. This is what the company demands, and we have to match that. it goes much beyond that. It goes beyond that to things that we are discussing here today, which are also beyond what the data tell us, right? These are really nuanced issues that are both societal, that are economic, but also very personal, right? We also, and when I say societal, economic, and personal, all three of these also come together in the way that the example that you were giving. I mean, the number of times that people will say to me, you know, textiles, we should just create dormitories for women, and that'll, you know, then the Bangladesh model will bring women from rural areas into dormitory. But what about everything else? The migration pathways, the food, the safety issues, all of those are very real. And those don't come out in the aggregate data, right? So my organization, we work on data, but we also realize that the realities, thanks to, you know, organizations like PRADAN that give us a window into this, that the reality breaks down if you don't, you know, that these pathways will not materialize. And the stories, the data breaks down very quickly if you don't actually get on the ground and see what's happening in a nuanced and careful way. So I think that is the goal of this conversation. I want to, you know, really, I'm happy that those are the directions that we're going in. And Anjani, I'd like to come to you next. And you know, you have a wealth of experience, you know, as being the senior program officer at Gates Foundation and working on NRLM for a long time. We'd like to draw on your experience, and you know, as has been repeated constantly, we can look at the aggregate, say we need to create more jobs for women, more demand, we can skill them, you know, but it's much more than that. And so can you tell us a little bit more about, in your view, what are the gaps in the other stuff? How do we actually create trajectories for women that take into account all of these different factors? What other models have you seen? We know, and Madhu will talk more about the PRADAN model, but beyond that as well, have you worked with different organizations, experiences where some of these solutions are being tried and tested that we can learn from, that you might have come across?
No, thank you, Sabina. And you know, at the outset, I would, you know, thanks, you know, the whole, you know, JustJobs Network team and the PRADAN team for not only organizing this event and, you know, I mean, releasing this report, but also, you know, bringing these whole issues, you know, to the, you know, to the eyes and ears of the policymakers. So I think, you know, for that, you know, the whole team, you know, deserves, you know, kudos. You know, in my mind, you know, women face, and it's unfortunately, you know, it's a stark reality that they face multiple penalties, and society imposes multiple penalties on them, you know, starting from birth. You know, I think as a society we don't celebrate the, you know, the birth of a, you know, daughter or birth of a girl child as much as, you know, we celebrate the boy child. You know, the penalty starts with the, you know, the marriage. I think we are talking about the migration, job-related migration, but I think probably the largest migration in the society that we have is the marriage-related migration, where a girl has to move, you know, her base from, you know, parents' family to the in-laws' families and all. So, so then once the child, you know, happens, then, you know, again she has to see whether she needs to be part of the labor market, she needs to, you know, focus on the child care. And then when she gets into the labor market, then the wage penalty happens. It's still in multiple areas you will see that wages are, in spite of all these regulatory provisions and all, the, you know, the wages for girls and boys, especially in the informal job market, are not the same. So in this kind of a situation, I mean, I'm not surprised that, you know, they have to face multiple challenges when they move from one place to other places, especially, you know, job related. I think some of the things which was presented in the report, I think that resonated very well with me. I think one thing like a family intermediations. I remember when we were designing the National Rural Livelihood Mission, one of the important process of the self-help group was the micro-planning process, through which they prioritize that who would get how much loan, for what purpose and all. And we thought that, okay, once they prepare these kind of a micro-planning, it will be good for women to go and talk to the family members, go and talk to the husband, go and talk to the daughters or the son. And the implication of that, what happened that the pushback from the family was very, very minimal. They own whatever was planned, and there is a larger ownership not only at the women level but also at the larger family level. So I think I would say that, and we discussed that okay, is this process going back to the family and discussing this, is this reduces her agency, or in long run it helps and builds her agency? And we realize that over the long run, I think this is helpful rather than it's a compromise at the agency level. So I would say following that kind of a process is an important process to do. I would also say that I think there are representatives from Jivika, and Jivika has been working on it. They were the one who started the Migration Resource Center long back. I think it has been there from the last 10-15 years. And these Migration Resource Center at the destination where they are migrating, I don't know why we are not scaling up. And one needs to understand that we are talking about the help days. We heard from Muni that how much it is helpful once you migrate from one place to other place. And there is someone who it just calls you and asks you, are you okay? And if this kind of a support system is available at the destination, I think I would, it has helped me, let me tell you, when I have gone from one place to other place, worked from my work point of view, whether it was Afghanistan or, Thailand or Malaysia, I think it has been very, very helpful for me to have someone to whom I know. So I think the undermining the significance of, this whole not having the, the cultural, social isolation, support system, to deal with those isolation. I remember I started my career with PRADAN. In the PRADAN, when we used to go to the campuses, one of the norm was don't recruit one person from that campus. At least have at least 2-3% from that campus, because the whole intellectual isolation also kills the overall effortfulness. So I think if those things works for us, I think it works equally for the for women and youth. I think again I would say that the secretary ma'am in the morning talked about the P dot. And I was wondering, why should the P dot only be applicable for international migration? Why can't it be done for even people migrating from one state to other state? We all were taught in our kindergarten that India is one of the most diverse country in the world. If there is so much of diversity exists, and if you include the P dot training program, which is like a pre-departures training program to sensitize about all these cultural sensitivity. I have faced, let me tell you, when I went for my higher studies from India to US, the first challenge which I faced, when I used to walk from my guest house to the university campus, I had a tendency to walk on the on the left side, whereas the rest of the crowd is walking on the right side. And I will always, from the people who are walking on the opposite side, I will just get into the head-on collisions and all. And I was wondering what is wrong with me. Why it's happening with me? And it was just because I was, had a practice to walk on the left side, where on the, in the US people prefer to walk. Practice is to walk on the right side. So I think, these kind of a small thing, but I think it matters. And building all these things as part of your training curriculum and all would be a very, very helpful thing to do. But also let me tell you just one last point probably. Um, I saw as part of the study, long working hours is one of the challenge. I also heard there is you talking about including food, transport, care, and other element. Uh, and there, when we have interact with different people, different people have a different views. Some people have been saying that people who migrate, they prefer long hours of work, especially when they get additional 2x 1.5x bonuses for extra hours of work. And that is because, one, they don't have much to do outside the work environment, and second, it's also because they prefer to earn as much as when they have migrated to a new place, so that when they are going back with a good sum of money and all. So that's another kind of a argument. Also, on these benefits, I think there are people who have been saying that most of the people would prefer to get a lump sum money, rather than getting these kind of a food or transport and all those things. They would prefer to get like whatever 20%, 30% additional and bundle as part of their cash in hand, that they get, rather than getting all these, like a food coupon or transport coupon and all those things. So I think probably, and I don't have any personal stand on it, but I think what the reason why I raised that, probably this requires a more inquiry to understand, what is the better way and what is the, to go about all these issues. But thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, thank you for that. I think on the last point with respect to working long hours, or, we hear both sides of that, absolutely, that, migrant workers prefer to work longer hours, or they would, most workers, and it's not just migrant workers, but the second point about, most would appreciate having more income than having these other kinds of, but, I think that, I think the key point there is, why should there be those trade-offs, right? Like, why, like, we have to aspire for enough income for these workers, especially for women, so that they're making enough in the reasonable number of hours so they don't have to work overtime, right? And that that safety, food, conveyance, all of these are entitlements that they should be getting anyway, that doesn't detract from their incomes. So I think I fully agree with you that is an aspirational thing, right, that we all aspire to, and the reality is very different. And so I think understanding that those are the perspectives, absolutely, we hear that. I'd rather work longer hours, I'd rather have a higher income than all of these. But I think the work of the people in this room, with all of our agency, is to actually say you shouldn't have to make those choices, and you shouldn't have to make those trade-offs, and that how can we get the ecosystem to support you, whether it starts from the family, building your own belief system, working with employers, and we have this intersection on this panel to try to represent those different perspectives, right? How do all of these different stakeholders that have agency come together to create an ecosystem that actually supports workers, and especially rural women, to build those growth trajectories, right? And I think a key player in this landscape is PRADAN on many different aspects, but certainly in this particular program with respect to the PRADAN Skilling and Employment Program. Devesh talked about making sure that women are made aware of both the challenges and the opportunities, and when they migrate, and having that, why is that support coming so later, right? Later rather than earlier. And I think these are exactly the kinds of issues that PRADAN's program is trying to address, right? And doing it much earlier in a much more structured way. I'll let Madhu talk about it, but our own experience is that this is a relatively small and new kind of initiative, but that there's enough evidence now that tells us that this approach works, and this approach gets at the very pardon my language, unsexy things that, you know, big fancy numbers and presentations don't talk about. It gets to the real heart of the real issues on the ground and tries to address those. So with that, Madhu, I want to come to you, definitely last but not least on the panel. If you could tell us, you know, a little bit more about the program and how you think it's working, and what is PRADAN thinking in terms of developing and, you know, developing this initiative further, because clearly the need is great and this program is meeting an important need. So how do you see that future?
Thanks, Sabina. Thank you also for, you know, bringing to surface all that you kind of observed during the process of the, you know, carrying out the study, and yeah, and for, you know, bringing together jointly, you know, this set of stakeholders. As you said, this is relatively a recent program in PRADAN. Started in 2019 with, you know, Kanta at UN Women supporting the Second Chance program across a bunch of states, and which then led to creating a proof of concept or prototype across a few of those geographies. And with, you know, again, support of a CSR partnership with Bajaj, we then, having created some kind of a prototype, we then, you know, expanded the prototype to a few more districts in Orissa. And then, of course, with, you know, Anjani sitting here and the Gates Foundation, we were able to then take this prototype, which we were doing it through our own direct action presence on the ground, to also, you know, work with the National Rural Livelihood Mission and a bunch of SRLMs, and Jitendra ji is sitting here. So Bihar was one of the SRLMs, to see how these learnings, which we were able to glean from the direct work, could also be translated into a larger systems, a kind of an ecosystem to, you know, really work on some of the critical pieces that we found were important. I think just to Anjani, Ranjini and Isha have kind of talked over many of those things. I will not go into the details, but, you know, just share a few highlights of what the program has been focusing on. So when we began, you know, I mean, we kind of realized, and in Madhya Pradesh, PRADAN was kind of already doing the youth program, but with a not with a differentiated focus on women alone, which is also important. But when we kind of started, we wanted to focus on women, because we realized that, you know, women face another set of, you know, challenges which are very different from men. And if we have to kind of soften this process of women's entry into workforce, then it needs that kind of a program design which looks into the unique challenges that young women particularly are facing. So that's what the entire program has been about. The other approach, you know, that in PRADAN we've taken is to bring a community-centered approach rather than a center-based approach, which we were able to do because of the presence on the ground that we've had across these geographies for several decades. And then to bring what we say, a reflective practitioner lens. So therefore, you know, as you keep encountering problems, you bring that lens of, you know, what is leading to the problem, and therefore, how do you kind of evolve the program design to take care in a structured manner to respond to the issues that one saw were actually happening. So that's how the program has evolved. And some of the key elements of the program, Ranjini and Isha spoke about, but essentially, briefly, we saw that a major challenge is that, you know, women in rural areas particularly, and the kind of rural areas, you know, in the deep hinterland, women don't have adequate role models of a different kind, which are talking to their sense of, you know, aspiration and leading to a triggering aspiration, because they are now getting educated. So therefore, and they are, as Kanta also said, they're exposed to various kinds of information stimuli. how to translate this into something which is doable, and is it doable by me, by a Muni sitting in a Dhenkanal village. Huh? So that was one of the things that we kind of did through reimagining future exercise, which is just a 2-day exercise, but it kind of stimulates the young woman to really think and imagine a life for herself, and not in a cookie cutter approach, but really building on her own strengths and interests and aspirations. The other thing that we did was that we said that we don't really want to set up our own center of, doing a GDA training or an SMO training or a whatever course, because there are enough and more people who are actually already running such centers. So we want to act like a bridge between people who are already doing this and women who are looking for these opportunities, to be like a good bridge who's able to link. We then realized that, maybe there are certain essential skills that will come in handy even when, women were to transit to employment. So therefore, and you would have heard of this, this term called employability skills. We are still trying to figure out what this means, but have put together something which we think, addresses some of the things that are required by, employers in the workforce. So put together that, onboarded, quality employers on a certain checklist. So employers who only fulfilled all the criteria in terms of, and there are several things there, in terms of safety, security, in terms of, quality of work which is being offered, in terms of, all the other things that we know are enablers, and accommodation is an enabler. Accommodation, conveyance, good food is an enabler, we find, Anjali. So putting in place a framework, and then onboarding employers through a rigorous process, not just like a tick mark, but actually visiting employers. And what was I saying? Yeah. And then putting together a safe passage, which encompasses and these are distant geographies, so encompassing the source and destination geographies, because however deep so we placed people at the destination level who provide this safe passage, but also the team at the source level also continues to play that role of providing a safe passage, because it doesn't end in 3 months, it doesn't end in 6 months, it is required over a longer period of time. So till that period of vulnerability, in which we still haven't figured out, we know that the first 3 months are particularly vulnerable, but for her to be in a position where she can actually determine, okay, things are not working out for me in maybe healthcare, can I shift to, or maybe in say employer XYZ, can I then make a shift? And can she make that shift on her own? Has developed her own network to be able to do it on her own. So we're still figuring out, what is that tipping point when she's able to do that. Till now, we do continue to play a role, even in, candidates who've been with us for 2 years, 3 years, although the kind of engagement does go down dramatically over a period of time. And I know you're looking at it. So, so I think I'll just shut up. There are several things, as Charanjit Singh ji, you said. It is very complex. There are historical lags in education. There are historical lags in things like just being able to speak English. There are historical lags in the level of nutrition, which is also, has other impacts on cognitive skills, etc. We just did a health camp first time with ADECO support, and the kind of, we couldn't do the hemoglobin test. I'm sure the results would have been, very disturbing. Yeah. But we did sugar tests and BMI. You can imagine the results. And these are not just, one can't attribute only to the employer, because these were also recent girls. the kind of, these are, also carrying over from the kind of, whatever is happening in the rural and also carrying over. So yeah, so there are several things, the way the industry is organized, the way workers have space in the industry to be able to have some influence, the space whether workers are able to get associated with a union, etc. There are also taboos related to that. So several things which are, so it is a complex thing, and yeah, yeah, I'll just shut up here. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's still working? Still working? Yeah, let's take that. Thank you. Now, yes, now it's definitely working. No, thank you so much for that, Madhu. And I think we could sit here and listen to the depth of your understanding for much, much longer. I think one of the things that you pointed out kind of in passing, which I think is fundamentally important, is that, there are a lot of organizations that work across many different areas in India in terms of employment, in terms of rural development, in terms of women's economic empowerment. But what I think distinguishes really extraordinary organizations from a lot of the noise is the fact that it takes years of building trust in the community before you can actually convince families to let their daughters go. It takes years of building trust in communities before you can be accepted in to tell people what kind of health interventions they should take. How should take this? ये दवाई ले लो, आपका sugar कम हो जाएगा. क्यों ले? आप कौन है हमें कहने वाले? Right? It takes years of trust to build these relationships in these communities in order to actually be able to create the awareness, in order to be able to have the kinds of development interventions that many of us are actually working toward. And I don't think that that can be discounted, because you can't come from the top and just say, we should just have, there's so many resource centers, migration resource centers, gender resource centers, employment exchanges, and they're not new, they've been there for a while. Why aren't they working? Because what it takes is the inside community engagement that actually brings out these realities, right? And I think that's something that's also a case that I'd like to make for exactly the kinds of micro interventions that we're hearing about today. If we're looking at the 10,000 foot level story with female labor force participation, all of that is important. But the nuances of families, of realities, of women's lives, of the ground, of communities, of households, that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's where more of us need to do more and more work. So with that, let me open it up for questions and answers. But first, I'd like to actually invite the cluster level federation from Bastar, Chhattisgarh. अगर आप आएंगे और हमारे साथ 2-3 मिनट के लिए आप कुछ थोड़ा अपने एक्सपीरियंस के बारे में आप हमारे साथ शेयर प्लीज़ करेंगे. Microphone hai? Okay. Well, let me, Kanta, before you leave, let me thank you so much for being here today and for the great work that you've been doing over years and now with UN Women as well. So thank you so much for being here. We understand you have to leave. Thanks.
धन्यवाद मैम. आप सभी को मेरा जय जोहार. छत्तीसगढ़ राज्य जिला बस्तर और मैं रोशनी महिला संकुल संगठन माड़पाल क्लस्टर में सचिव के पद में पदस्थ हूँ. जैसे कि हमारे संकुल में विगत कई वर्षों से NRLM के तहत दीदियों की आजीविका बढ़ाने हेतु ऐसे बहुत से काम हो रहे हैं, जैसे कि मुख्यतः कृषि, उन्नत सब्जी उत्पादन, देसी मुर्गी पालन, बकरी पालन और छोटे छोटे व्यवसाय के क्षेत्र में भी काम कर रहे हैं, जैसे कि दीदियों की आजीविका में बढ़ोतरी हो रही है. हमारे संकुल के हर बार के बैठक में मुद्दा सबसे बड़ा मुद्दा ये आता है कि जैसे कि दीदियाँ कहती हैं कि हमारे जो बच्चे हैं 10वीं 12वीं पढ़ के जो छोड़ चुके हैं, अपने घर की आर्थिक स्थिति मतलब खराब होने के कारण आगे की पढ़ाई नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. ऐसे बच्चों के लिए हमारा संकुल ने सोचा कि प्रधान और NRLM के सहयोग से हमें ये समझ बना कि नहीं, हमें भी इन बच्चों को भी कुछ ना कुछ रोजगार से जोड़ना चाहिए, इनको भी हमारे साथ लेते हुए चलना चाहिए. इसके लिए हमने जैसे कि अलग अलग विभागों से बात किए, जैसे आरसीटी हो गया, लाइवलीहुड कॉलेज और प्रथम जैसे संस्था के माध्यम से हमने अलग अलग विभागों से बात किया और कि प्रधान के सहयोग से हमें अलग अलग राज्यों से भी जैसे कि बड़े बड़े कंपनियों से संपर्क किए। तो हमने सर्वे और सबसे मतलब हम इस काम को किस प्रकार से चालू करें, इसके लिए हमने जो हमारे कैडर हैं ग्रामीण स्तर में काम करते हैं उनके माध्यम से हमने गांव-गांव में सर्वे कराया। सर्वे के दौरान हमें लगभग 400 से 500 बच्चों का लिस्ट आया और इसलिए हम सर्वे के दौरान ही हमने उनका नाम, पता और मोबाइल नंबर भी लिया था। हमारे संकुल के MIS दीदी के द्वारा हमने एंट्री करवाए। एंट्री के चलते हमें लगा हम इनको किस नौकरी से जोड़े, कैसे इनको रोजगार दिले, इसके लिए हमने अलग अलग संस्था में बात किए और प्रधान के संस्था के माध्यम से अलग अलग राज्यों में भी हम लोग कंपनियों के बारे में हमें पता चला। तो हमें पता चला कि यहाँ पे जो संस्था है निःशुल्क ट्रेनिंग देता है 3 महीने का। ट्रेनिंग के बाद हमने एक रोजगार मेला का आयोजन किया लाइवलीहुड कॉलेज में। हमने रोजगार मेला आयोजन से पहले हमने जिला में सूचनार्थ किया कि हम यहाँ पे आयोजन मेला रख रहे हैं। तो वहाँ पे कलेक्टर सर भी हम शामिल हुए उस मेला में और उन्होंने कहा कि बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हो, जो बच्चे पिछड़े हुए हैं उनको अच्छा हुआ आप लेते चल रहे हो, बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हो, इसके लिए हमें सराहना भी दिए। और हम इस काम को, इस प्रक्रिया को किस प्रकार करते हैं, हाँ हम मेरे साथ आई हुई मेरे ज़िले से, बस्तर ज़िले से अनुसुईया दीदी आगे की प्रक्रिया को आपके साथ साझा करेगी। इतना कह के मैं अपनी वाणी को विराम देती हूँ। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
आप सभी को जय बिहार। मेरा नाम मनसूया बघेल है और मैं नारी शक्ति क्लस्टर संकुल परचन पाल से आजीविका उप समिति की सदस्य हूँ। हमें तो जैसे बच्चों को रोजगार के लिए निकालने में बहुत ही परेशानी होता था क्योंकि घर वाले, समाज वाले बच्चे को बाहर निकलने नहीं देते थे। फिर हमने गांव-गांव, पारा-पारा में जाकर परिवार चौपाल बैठक और किशोरी बैठक आयोजित की, जिससे कुछ परिवर्तन आया और कुछ दिनों के बाद बच्चे प्रशिक्षण में आना शुरू किए। उसके बाद हमने कम से कम 1600 बच्चों से संपर्क कर पाए, जिसमें 600 बच्चे को भविष्य की पुनर्कल्पना का प्रशिक्षण दिला पाए और जिसमें 450 बच्चों को हमने कौशल विकास प्रशिक्षण से जोड़ पाए और जिसमें हमने 152 बच्चियों को रोजगार के लिए जोड़ पाए और जिसमें हमने कुल 32 बच्चों को हमने स्वरोजगार से जोड़े, जैसे कि सिलाई मशीन, CSC सेंटर, होटल व्यवसाय, मैकेनिक, ऐसे कई प्रकार के रोजगार से जोड़ पाए। जैसे कि आप सभी जानते हैं कि बस्तर एक नक्सल प्रभावित क्षेत्र है और यहाँ ऐसे काम करना बहुत ही मुश्किल है, पर हमने कोशिश की और लगातार प्रयास के कारण आज हम यहाँ आपके सामने आकर अपनी बातों को साझा कर पा रहे हैं। अंत में मैं कहना चाहूँगी कि जैसे हमारे संकुल की दीदियाँ हैं, वो आगे आए, अपने बच्चियों के लिए कुछ करे, उन्हें रोजगार से जोड़े और वो हमारे आने वाले भविष्य है उनकी मदद करे। हम इतनी दूर यहाँ आए हैं और कुछ निवेदन करना चाहते हैं, जैसे कि हमारे संकुलों में कृषि सखी, पशु सखी, सक्रिय महिला दीदी है जो अपने कार्यों को अच्छे से कर रही है, उसी प्रकार हमें भी एक रोजगार सखी के रूप में कैडर मिल पाते तो हमारे कार्यों में आसानी होती। और जैसे हमने बच्चों के पुनर्भविष्य की कल्पना के लिए हम तो प्रशिक्षण दे रहे हैं, तो हमें कुछ प्रशिक्षण राशि मिल जाता और बच्चे को हमको जोड़ के रखना पड़ता है। जैसे बच्चे दूसरे राज्यों में काम करने जाती है और उन बच्चों के साथ हमको हमेशा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में रहना पड़ता है, साल भर उनसे निरंतर बात करना पड़ता है कि तुम कैसी हो, कहाँ हो। और ऐसा होता है कि बच्चे जो अपनी छोटी छोटी परेशानियों को ना बताकर वापस चले आते हैं नौकरी छोड़कर। तो हमें ये सब काम पूरा करने के लिए हमें एक हेल्प डेस्क की ज़रूरत थी। अगर हम सरकार से कहना चाहेंगे कि अगर हमें ये सब मिल जाएंगे तो हमारे कार्यों में बेहतर होगा। मैं इतना कहकर अपनी वाणी को विराम देती हूँ। आप सभी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
ये वाला चल रहा है। So I think before we end, पहले मैं एक बार मुन्नी आपके पास आना चाहूँगी. आप वो वाला माइक ले लीजिए, क्योंकि हमारे पास अब ज़्यादा समय नहीं है, तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली हम क्वेश्चन एंड आंसर्स नहीं कर पाएंगे. और क्वेश्चन एंड आंसर्स से ज़्यादा मैं चाहूँगी कि मैं एक बार और मुन्नी से एक सवाल पूछूं कि मुन्नी, आपने बहुत कुछ सुना है यहाँ पे जो प्रदान भी कर रही है और भी लोगों ने जो शेयर किया है, तो आप हमें बता सकते हैं कि अगर एक कोई ऐसी चीज़ हो जो आपको लगता है कि ये करने से और भी लड़कियों की सहायता होगी, आप जैसे और भी लड़कियां हिम्मत करेंगी, रोज़गार परसू करेंगी, और जैसे उड़ीसा से बाहर जाके लखनऊ में आप काम कर रहे हैं, तो ऐसी एक क्या चीज़ है जो आपको लगता है करनी चाहिए जिससे दूसरी लड़कियों की भी और आपकी भी और मदद हो सके और आप आगे बढ़ सकें? चल रहा है? नहीं
मैम, मैं यही कहना चाहूँगी.
नहीं, अभी चल नहीं रहा. हाँ, ये ट्राई करो.
थैंक यू. मैम, मैं ये कहना चाहूँगी कि जो भी बच्चियाँ काम करना चाहते हैं और जो उनके पेरेंट्स राज़ी नहीं होते, इसके लिए हमारे जो एनजीओ सर काम कर रहे हैं, उनमें से अच्छी एक क्वालिटी है कि उस सेफ्टी का गारंटी सर्टिफिकेट में साइन करवाते हैं. जस्ट उस पेरेंट्स को वो बिलीव करना चाहिए कि हाँ, अगर कोई दे रहा है, इतना गारंटी दे रहा है, तो मुझे उस बच्ची को आगे बढ़ना छोड़ना चाहिए. लाइक मेरे पेरेंट्स के सामने ही मुझे सर्टिफिकेट में साइन करना पड़ा था, और मेरे प्रोफेसर, मेरे सीनियर जो थे, उन्होंने भी साइन किया था. आईना के मेंबर्स भी मेरी गारंटी ली थी कि नहीं, आपकी बच्ची सेफ्टी से ही रहेगी. तो इस जो प्रोसेस है उसमें बिलीव करना है, बस इतना ही कहूँगी. थैंक यू.
Thank you so much. So as I said कि हमारे पास अब समय ज़्यादा नहीं है, तो मैं बस इसके साथ पैनल क्लोज करना चाहूँगी. I want to thank Munni, Devesh ji, Anjani ji, Madhu ji. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your experiences and your insights with the panel. Now, before we end, we have a treat. We have the I'll let Sangeeta introduce him, but certainly someone who doesn't need much of an introduction, but who's also been a great mentor and guide for the Just Jobs Network, and I believe also an important partner for PRADAN. So thank you to all the panelists, and we'll now go toward our closing remarks. And I'd just like to say before I end that of course, it's kind of embarrassing that I started getting emotional on the panel at the end. But I actually think that that's a really good thing. And I think that, I work with numbers, I work with data, I work with other economists. But I think at the end of the day, I hope more of you will get emotional about this work too. And really bring your heart and mind to bear. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabina, and thank you to all our panelists for such an enriching and thought-provoking discussion. I request Shikha to felicitate Ms. Muni and Mr. Devesh, and request Ranjani to felicitate Mr. Anjani and Ms. Madhu. Thank you, Shikha and Ranjani. The conversation today has clearly shown us that enabling rural women's pathways to work is not just about creating opportunities. It's about creating the right support systems, strengthening confidence, and building ecosystem of trust. And with that, we now move to the final segment of today's event, the closing address by Mr. Anurag Beher. Mr. Anurag is the CEO of Azim Premji Foundation and the founding Vice Chancellor of Azim Premji University. He has been a strong advocate for Indians' public systems, especially public education. Azim Premji Foundation has been supporting us to also initiate the skilling program in other states than Odisha and Bihar. I kindly request Mr. Arunag to join us on dais to deliver the closing address.
Good afternoon. Namaste. It's wonderful to be here. PRADAN is one of most important, one of most valued partners, and I mean, we are truly grateful for what you do, and you've been an exemplar for this country, for the civil society. It's just amazing what you do. JustJobs Network, they do absolutely remarkable work. The kind of unusual research that I am not horrified by, because most of other kinds of research I'm horrified by. So JustJobs does this really wonderful stuff. You've seen some of the things that PRADAN and JustJobs have together come up with. So thank you, both organizations. And I want to thank the JustJobs team and the PRADAN team who have, I think, worked through the night, worked through days to organize this event. Thank you very much. Right, thank you. एक पिक्चर थी 2003 की. उस फिल्म का नाम है मैं माधुरी दीक्षित बनना चाहती हूँ. सुना है आप लोगों ने? है ना? 23 साल हो गए, बहुत दिन हो गए. एक अरसा गुजर गया, दुनिया बदल गई. छुटकी था उस लड़की का नाम, किसी को याद है? उस दुनिया और आज की दुनिया में एक बहुत बड़ा फ़र्क है. कई बहुत बड़े फ़र्क हैं, लेकिन एक बहुत बड़ा फ़र्क है कि तब इस देश के छोटे शहरों और गांवों में लड़कियां तब माधुरी दीक्षित बनना चाहती हूँ देखती थीं, तो वो एंटरटेन होकर वापस आ जाती थी. उनके दिल में कभी ये सही में नहीं होता था कि मैं माधुरी दीक्षित बन जाऊंगी. 2003 में नहीं था. 2003 और आज में फ़र्क ये आ गया है कि आज किसी गांव में जाएं, चाहे वो झारखंड हो, चाहे वो तमिलनाडु हो, चाहे वो नागालैंड हो या गुजरात हो, आज लड़कियों को लगता है कि वो सही में माधुरी दीक्षित बन जाएंगी. क्योंकि अब केवल माधुरी दीक्षित तो है नहीं, बगल के ज़िले की एक इंस्टाग्राम इन्फ्लुएंसर भी है. उसको तो सब जानते हैं. उसको लगता है अरे वाह, मैं तो महू की हूँ, ये गाजीपुर ज़िले की एक लड़की तो इतनी बड़ी इन्फ्लुएंसर बन गई है, तो मैं क्यों नहीं बन सकती. बहुत बड़ा फ़र्क आ गया है. हम लोग जो काम करते हैं उसमें हम लोग करीब 15,000 यूथ ग्रुप से जुड़े हुए हैं. उनके साथ काम करते हैं. 15,000 यूथ ग्रुप, 20-25 यंग लोगों के ग्रुप्स हैं. लड़कियां भी हैं, लड़के भी हैं. करीब 4.5 लाख यंग लोग हैं. यही देखते हैं हम कि आज यंग लोगों को ये विश्वास हो गया है कि वो माधुरी दीक्षित बन सकती हैं, जो 2003 में नहीं था. क्यों हुआ है? ये सबके हाथ में, इंस्टाग्राम सबके हाथ में, पता नहीं क्या क्या सबके हाथ में. तो हम ये देख रहे हैं कि जो एस्पिरेशंस हैं, और ये मैं उस तरह की एस्पिरेशंस की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ जो ईशा और रंजनी कर रही थी. मैं डिफ्यूज्ड एस्पिरेशंस की बात कर रहा हूँ कि ज़िंदगी बेहतर हो जाएगी, हम कहीं और चले जाएंगे, हम क्यों ऐसे रहें. ये डिफ्यूज्ड एस्पिरेशंस, नॉट स्पेसिफिक एस्पिरेशंस कि मैं किसी अच्छे होटल में काम करूँगी, लेकिन डिफ्यूज एस्पिरेशन. डिफ्यूज्ड एस्पिरेशंस जो हैं बढ़ते ही जा रहे हैं. वी आर स्टोकिंग देम, स्टोकिंग द फायर ऑफ डिफ्यूज्ड एस्पिरेशंस. But at the same time, what we also see that the pathways towards those diffuse aspirations are just not keeping pace. That is the other huge change. 2003 में अगर मैं यहाँ के लिए, इस सभा के लिए मैं एक मेट्रिक कहूँ, मेट्रिक मतलब एक मेजर, एस्पिरेशंस और पाथवेज के बीच में जो फर्क था 2003 में, वो फर्क, जो गैप था, खाई थी, वो गैप और खाई कहीं बढ़ गई है। जो एस्पिरेशंस हैं कहीं और जा रहे हैं, और हमारे जो पाथवेज हैं जिनके बारे में हम बात कर रहे थे, दे हैव नॉट केप्ट पेस। It's not just an economic issue. It is already and will be perhaps the most significant social and political issue of our times. Right? तो मैं पहली बात ये कहना चाहता हूँ, ये जो मेरे ख्याल से आप लोगों में से किसी ने कहा कि ये छोटी सी पहल है, ठीक है, इसके बारे में, छोटी सी पहल के बारे में बाद में बात करूँगा। छोटी सी पहल है, लेकिन ये सही पहल है। इस तरह की पहल के बिना ये जो हम खाई देख रहे हैं बढ़ती ही जा रही है, उसको हम लोग पाट ही नहीं पाएंगे, और देश का, हमारे युवाओं का भविष्य का क्या होगा हम जानते ही नहीं हैं। तो मेरी पहली बात, और मैं 3 बातें कहने वाला हूँ। पहली बात कि इस खाई को हम जानें जो बढ़ती ही जा रही है, डिफ्यूज एस्पिरेशंस और इनएडिक्वेट पाथवेज के बीच में, पहली बात। दूसरी बात यह है, मैं दूसरी बात यह कहना चाहता हूं कि आप लोगों ने नोटिस किया होगा, मुझे बड़ा अच्छा लगा कि हम इंडिया हैबिटेट सेंटर में बैठे हुए हैं। सरोज हंस रहे हैं वो जानते हैं मैं क्या कहने वाला हूं। तो हम इंडिया हैबिटेट सेंटर में बैठे हुए हैं। आपकी सब लोग दिल्ली वाले हैं। आप लोग कितने दिल्ली के बाहर हैं? चलिए 4-5 लोग हैं। गलत झूठ हाथ उड़ा रहे हैं कुछ लोग तो ठीक है। तो आप लोग सब दिल्ली, पावरफुल दिल्ली, यहाँ सब कुछ यहीं, लोगों का भविष्य नियति यहीं तय होती है, ऐसा लगता है। लेकिन मुझे बड़ा अच्छा लगा कि इस पूरे 2-2.5 घंटे में एक बार किसी ने ये नहीं कहा कि पॉलिसी बदल दीजिए। किसी ने कहा? किसी ने नहीं कहा कि सारा प्रॉब्लम है कि पॉलिसी ऐसा कर देंगे, ये कर देंगे, वो कर देंगे, पॉलिसी बदल जाएगी तो दुनिया बदल जाएगी। अगर ऐसा होता ना तो हमारा देश जो होता ना, वो तो हमारे संविधान के सपने हैं, हम उनको अभी साकार कर चुके होते, अगर पॉलिसी से सब कुछ हो सकता तो मुझे बड़ा अच्छा लगा कि पॉलिसी के बारे में बात नहीं हुई। मुझे बड़ा अच्छा लगा कि माइग्रेशन एंड रोड टू वर्क, उसमें क्या क्या बातें हुई जरा सोचिए। डिग्निटी की बात हुई, खाने की बात हुई, इमोशन की बात हुई, रिस्पेक्ट की बात हुई, ठीक है। तो मैं किस तरफ जा रहा हूं? मैं इस तरफ रहा हूं कि हम जिन चीजों से जूझ रहे हैं, खाई से भी जो जूझ रहे हैं, ये सारी बातें जो हैं, दे आर ह्यूमन इश्यूज, these are not economic issues, right? Economic issues are a part of that, and unless we are able to ask the right kind of questions in the right kind of manner, we will never get to what needs to be done. So if we ask questions from a distance, the distance of powerful Delhi, right, then we are not even asking the right questions. Forget about getting the right answers, right? So when you do this kind of research, and by the way, I must say this, I've said this to Saroj and to Madhu that day, that it is this kind of research that really will get us solutions, which is truly grounded. और वो possible है क्योंकि प्रदान जैसी संस्था धरातल पर काम करती है, और जस्ट जॉब्स जैसी संस्था उनके साथ पार्टनर करके रिसर्च करती है। तो ये जो चीज़ों से हम जूझ रहे हैं, दे आर ऑल ह्यूमन इश्यूज। दीज ह्यूमन इश्यूज कैन नॉट बी रिड्यूस्ड और एब्स्ट्रैक्टेड टू नंबर्स। द मोमेंट यू डू दैट, every nuance that we have talked about, it vanishes, disappears. And when it disappears, there is no way you can solve the problems. जब आप ये जानते ही नहीं हो कि डिग्निटी ही सबसे महत्वपूर्ण चीज है, आप ये जानते ही नहीं हो और ये सवाल ही नहीं पूछते हो, तो कैसे सॉल्व करोगे आप उसको? तो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा कि दिल्ली जैसी आपकी दिल्ली में आप लोगों ने पॉलिसी के ऊपर ये थोपा नहीं, ठीक है। मैं मजाक कर रहा हूँ, आप लोग तो ठीक ठाक लोग हैं, बाहर के लोग गड़बड़ हैं। तो दूसरी बात मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि ये ज़रूरी है, सख्त ज़रूरी नहीं, इसके सिवा कुछ होगा ही नहीं, कि हम सही प्रश्न पूछें। और सही प्रश्न पूछने का तरीका केवल एक ही है, हम क्या प्रश्न महत्वपूर्ण है हम धरातल से जानें। यहाँ बैठ के IHC से नहीं आने वाला है, बिल्कुल नहीं आने वाला है। उसके लिए साइड लाइट ये है, जस्ट जॉब्स और प्रदान और ऐसी बहुत सारी पार्टनरशिप्स हों जो इस तरह के सही सवालों को पूछें और सही रास्तों को दिखाएं। तीसरी बात जो मैं कहना चाहता हूं, जो दोनों बातों से जुड़ी हुई है, वो ये है कि मेरा सौभाग्य है, हमारी बहुत सारी पार्टनर संस्थाएं हैं, 2000 पार्टनर संस्थाएं हैं हमारी, ठीक है। हमारा खुद का बहुत काम है ग्राउंड लेवल पर, बहुत लोग आप लोग जानते हैं, ठीक है। मुझे ये लगता है कि पिछले 30, 40, 50 साल में हम लोगों ने जो असल काम है, असल मुश्किल काम है, उसको सरल बनाने के लिए उसको झुठलाना शुरू कर दिया है। क्योंकि काम जो है वो असल में ग्राउंड लेवल पर है, और ग्राउंड लेवल पे कुछ भी करना बहुत मुश्किल है, बहुत मुश्किल है। वो सारी लड़कियों की आप बात कर रहे हैं, जो जैसे आपने अगर कहा ना कि आई थिंक अंजनी या देवेश सिंह कि वो रहने के लिए जगह, ठीक है। लेकिन अरे भाई, रहने के लिए जगह के लिए तुम पॉलिसी तो नहीं बना सकते ना। वो रहने के लिए जगह पॉलिसी बनाओगे कुछ नहीं होने वाला उसका। अब उसको किसी को वो घर बनाना पड़ेगा, रहने की जगह बनानी पड़ेगी, वहाँ वो चादर कैसी है, पानी आता है कि नहीं, टॉयलेट साफ़ है कि नहीं, ठीक है, वो खाना कोई बना रहा है तो खाना खाती है कि नहीं, इसका क्या करोगे आप? ये बहुत मुश्किल काम है, बहुत ही मुश्किल काम है। तो हम लोगों ने पिछले 40-50 साल में इससे निजात पाने के लिए अपना हाथ उठा लिया है, कहे कि पॉलिसी कर लीजिए या ऐसा कुछ कर दीजिए दूर से, ठीक है ना। तो मैं तो केवल ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि हमारा जहाँ तक सवाल है मेरी संस्था का, हम इस बात आपके साथ पूरी तरह से हैं कि ये जो मुश्किल काम है जो ग्राउंड लेवल पर है, वो धीरे धीरे व्यक्ति दर व्यक्ति होता है, उसका कोई स्केलिंग नहीं होता, उसका कोई सिस्टम चेंज नहीं होता है, ठीक है ना। जो व्यक्ति दर व्यक्ति, गांव दर गांव, बच्चा दर बच्चा, युवा दर युवा होता है, वही काम असल काम है। और कोई कुछ भी कहता रहे, उनकी बात आप मत सुनिए, ठीक है। तो आप दोनों संस्थाओं को और जो लोग भी यहाँ थे, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, मुझे मौका दिया। थैंक यू।
Thanks, Anurag ji, for such heartful closing remarks. With the examples of Madhuri Dixit and technology, you easily highlighted that aspirations are not the functions geographies. And aspirations of today's youth has to be nurtured so that they can achieve their dreams for their bright future. I request Purvi to felicitate Anurag ji. मैं पूर्वी से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी हमारी बस्तर से जिले से आई हुई दीदी को भी फेलिसिटेट करें। With this, we come to the close of today's event. On behalf of PRADAN and JustJobs Network, I extend my sincere gratitude to all our speakers, panelists, partners, and participants for joining us today. We hope This discussion contributes meaningfully towards shaping better pathways for rural women's employment and migration. Now, I'm happy to invite you all to join us for lunch. Thank you and have a wonderful day. I would request all our panelists to join us on stage for the photograph session.